talk recruiting. And you see the title there, What the Best Do and Others Don't, Recruiting Secrets and Then Some. We have Maren Walseth, who was just recently named head coach at North Dakota State. Congratulations. But for many years, she was a part of the success at Penn State, both as a player, but also with Coquise Washington and what they accomplished there with 3 Big Ten championships, 2 Sweet 16s. Game changers like Maggie Lucas and Alex Bentley, she helped to recruit and bring there, and we all know that you need those kind of players to have success. So we're looking forward to hearing some of your secrets. And to her left is Shannon Perry, who is now at UCLA. She's also had coaching stints, most recently at Duke, amongst others. And I mentioned Duke in particular because we're looking at someone who signed a number 2 class while at Duke, a number 3 class, a number 5 class. Signing top 5 classes is what she does. And Shannon signed the number 1 class this year for UCLA. So that is going to be fun and exciting to watch the talent that she brings in. She also coached as an assistant in the national championship game at Duke in 2006. But we know that UCLA is on the rise, and Corey Close is another one of my favorites. So we'll be watching that program continue to grow. And without further ado, Maren and Shannon.
Hi, can we use our coaching voices, or do we actually have to use a microphone? Thank you, LaChina. I am excited to be here. The last couple of weeks have been very exciting, a whirlwind, everything that everybody tells you, it's all very true, and then some, but I wanted to be able to come back anyway and talk a little bit more about the recruiting from my experience at Penn State. And most certainly there's a million ways to recruit. There's no one perfect way. You're going to hear something different from Shannon, or maybe similar, but it's all very unique and different, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. You have to do what works for you, and what works for your program, and what works for your head coach. And right off the bat, the philosophy of your program needs to be mirrored with the philosophy of your recruiting. And that's everything from the type of player that your head coach wants to coach, can coach, has the ability to reach, the style of play, the type of person, the academic profile. I mean, it's the whole 9 yards. It has to mirror what your program is about. If you can't recruit with that philosophy, you are not going to be, that person is not going to be successful in your program. If you don't know what that philosophy is, ask your head coach. Get it down from him or her exactly what they're looking for in every category. If they can't tell you, ask, or if you don't understand their answers, ask the other assistants who may have been there a little bit longer, or who have worked with that head coach before. You know exactly what your head coach wants, and that makes your job a lot easier. If you don't know what they're looking for, you're kind of doing it on your own, you're going to go into dead ends, and you're going to bring people to the table and situations to the table that they can't entertain, won't entertain, and you'll just have spun your wheels and be very frustrated. On your staff, you can't all recruit the same type of kid, because then you get the same type of kid on the court, and they're all very passive, or they're all very aggressive, or they're all very wild and crazy. You know, I mean, you can't have all of the exact same personality, or that's just not a good locker room combination to have. So within your staff, you know, on your other assistants there, who speaks to who? Make sure there's a good cross reference, a cross balance as far as the more passive, the more polite, the more yes man, no man kids, or you know, have enough of those to complement the kids with a little bit of edge, and which are your assistant coaches that have that and can speak to that and can understand that, and that the recruits have a good rapport with. So there's a few different personality types, and knowing what your strength is, and making sure that your team and the kids that you recruit kind of go through that parameter, not all the same type of kid. But your head coach is not going to connect with kids that they don't want to connect with. And you need to make sure that you're going after the kids, recruiting the kids. They're out there. They are out there. Like Coquise Washington likes kids that talk about doing their homework, that maybe have another, that play a musical instrument, that want to be involved in the hospital. Like those kids are out there. And they are very good players. You just have to find them. And not be discouraged when you know, you think this kid is a great kid on paper and she plays fantastic, she's going to fit in your system, but you can just tell right off the bat that the conversation is not going to go down the Cougars Washington path. And that's okay. Just, I'm another kid that will. When we go to like evaluating the prospects, I'm sure we've all heard you have to build that relationship and build that relationship early. I know that we've had kids that we've been the first program, Penn State's been the first program to offer, and that kid sticks with us the whole time. We've also come in and been the third or fourth offer, and the kid goes to the first offer, whether they were in 9th grade or 10th grade or blossomed a little bit later and it, you know, was a later recruitment. You want to be in on it early, and that's not to say pressure your head coaches into offering all these kids right off the bat if that's not the style that your head coach goes. But getting in and building relationships early so you kind of grow with that prospect. They, you know, 16, 17, 15, those are very impressionable ages that if you can grow with them and help them see that you're influencing their lives well before they even step on campus, you're building a connection, and that's when they feel more comfortable, more confident with you, and it ultimately kind of pays off for you. I think the second one is kind of a no-brainer, who fits your style of play, but I think we can all, myself included, get caught up in, oh, she's a fantastic whatever. Well, we have 3 of them on our roster already to continue to recruit her, because she's not going to flourish in your system and at your program because of where she is, just not in the pecking order, but just where she is in her grade, in her graduation. You know, we're not going to sign a fantastic shooter. We had Maggie Lucas for 4 years. We didn't want to. Not because we didn't want anybody to back up Maggie, but that's unfair to that next great shooter. Now, you know, Maggie's a senior, now we push the envelope and, you know, we're doing something a little bit different. But knowing the style of play and what your needs are is very, very important. One thing that Penn State was very, very successful in and very diligent about was watching the progression. I think a lot of kids, or a lot of programs, want to come in like, oh, she can play first right now. Well, she's in 9th grade. I don't think that's the case. But where is she the summer of her 9th grade year to the high school game you watched during her sophomore year? What is the progression then in the spring of her sophomore year? Then the summer after her sophomore, what is the progression and how fast is that happening in relation to other players at her position or at her age? You know, we've all heard of the kid that's like heads and shoulders above everybody in 9th grade and 10th grade, and then you go watch him in 11th grade and you're like, is that the same kid? Like, her class grew up, caught up to her. She didn't keep progressing at that same pace. And so just being cognizant of that and knowing the kids who are continuing to get better versus the ones that kind of plateau, I think that's an aspect that we were very diligent about when you send your head coach to watch somebody play. Now, she's only in 10th grade. However, these 4 things have really improved since the last time I watched her. I think you need to get a pulse on it. So the progression of things. Kind of talked a little bit about the diversity of the skill sets, but also the personalities. That's something that we at Penn State did a personality test, or a personality inventory, I guess you could say. And there's a handful of different ones out there. We did one that was based on colors, where oranges are all these like super flamboyant, outgoing, loud, fast energy, you know, great kids that can't get themselves anywhere on time because that's not what they're concerned about. If you can't have a team of oranges, the coaches will go crazy. You can't room oranges together on the road because their alarm won't go off and they won't show up at the right time. So that's why I say like personalities, knowing and having a combination of personalities on your roster, which comes from having a combination of personalities that you recruit, is also very important. The academic profile of your prospective student athletes, I don't know everybody's philosophy on that. At Penn State, being a high academic institution, we got transcripts on 9th graders. And that guidance counselor is like, well, she's been in high school for 1 semester. I can give it to you. Yes, please. Yes. Again, we're tracking and we're watching the progress. Kids are going to have a bad teacher or have a bad class, not fall in love with U.S. history. Okay, like, are you going to hold it against her that she didn't like U.S. history, but, you know, she's fantastic at other things, or she works at other things, but you can never get a transcript too early. And we have a fax. It goes out every, like the first day of the fall semester, the first day of the spring semester, at the end of the school year, and we are like best friends with the guidance counselors. You can't get enough transcripts. Again, you don't want any surprises at the end of the day. You just that was our philosophy. It worked well. It drove our staff assistant crazy, but we knew exactly who we were getting. And not that everybody has to be a straight A student. That's not, you can have maybe at-risk kids or kids that aren't as far along academically, and that's fine. You just can't have a whole team of them. And you have to know what you're getting yourself into and what your head coach and what your program are willing to take on. It's not a knock that the kid isn't a 3.5 student or a 3.0 student or whatever, but just knowing that early. I think character kind of speaks for itself, but character is different for everybody in every location and every head coach. But having a pulse on the character of these young ladies is critical, and that comes from some of the things we already talked about, building relationships early and building relationships with guidance counselors when you get transcripts. You're just constantly talking to these people about the type of young lady this person is. And red flag issues are, red flags. Everybody has a different definition of a red flag. These red flags that can come out, and things that I look at is how they interact on the AAU circuit, how they interact with their AAU coach, with their AAU teammates. I mean, we see them how many times in July? There's a lot of different scenarios. Sometimes they're winning, sometimes it's the 8 a.m. game, sometimes it's the 8 p.m. game, sometimes it's the last game of the tournament, sometimes it's the first game of the tournament. But just taking all of that observation into consideration. How are they interacting with the coaches? How are they interacting with their teammates? How are they interacting with the refs that may or may not be good at that time? And I always think it's interesting when you go stand out in the lobby, or some of these places have the little food court, and you hear this kid just reaming out their parent or reaming out the coach. It's like, well, if they're going to ream out the AU coach, they're certainly going to ream me out in a matter of years. Just another area and another avenue to kind of observe these kids. I'm sure we all follow all of our recruits on Instagram or Twitter or whatever the next best thing is out there. And take those things for real. We stopped recruiting a young lady because of the picture that she put on her Twitter account. It was very inappropriate, and it was, the third thing that was kind of oh, well, she's immature, she's young, we can, kind of help her, and then this picture showed up. And we're like, you know what? We're done. That's one battle that we're not going to fight, and that speaks to more of her than just, one picture. But I think that's, when you talk about who you want to bring into your program, we are in a situation that you can choose who you bring into your program. Nobody is forcing you to take anybody. You can be choosing. As long as you do your homework and do your work, you can pick the very best kids that are going to fit your program. And different head coaches in different programs are willing to take on more or be mentors in different directions. So again, none of it's a knock on any young lady. It's just what you're cut out to work with and be successful at. Now the team approach to recruiting, that is very, I don't want to say unique, because I think a lot of places do, but I don't know that everybody does it. At Penn State, we were all involved in every part of recruiting. We did not have, she's Shannon's recruit, she's Martin's recruit, everybody recruited everybody. We got companies on the phone with everybody. I went and saw everybody, not just the post players, not just the kids in my region, not just, everybody did everything. And a lot of the feedback that we got from the girls on our team was, we just felt like we were coming to a family. We knew everybody, and that was completely by design. We wanted the recruits, the parents, the moms, the dad, everybody to know everything about Penn State. So there could never be a situation well, who's that? Why did she just show up in the gym? She's just coming in the picture now? No, we've all been in the picture the whole time. Now within that, I think there are avenues and areas that speak easier and better to other people. For instance, we have a male on our staff at Penn State. We had Fred Schmiel. He did a heck of a lot more with the dads than I did. That made sense, that worked. He spoke their language, I didn't. We played into that, very well. But yet he still called the high school coach. He still worked it. I still talked to the dads, but we put Fred kind of in charge of the dads. Someone's in charge of the high school coach, someone's in charge of the AU coach. And that can be different for everybody, because finding your staff's areas of strength when it comes to communication, and also matching that with the recruit. Some recruits just don't talk to guy coaches, some recruits just don't talk to head coach. Whatever it is, that can't be the barrier, that can't be the reason that we don't make any more progress. Figure out who she will talk to. Figure out how she does want to communicate. Texting, after dinner, that works, go all, ride it. If that's what she wants to do, that's what you're gonna do. But getting everybody involved. When they come on campus, everybody's involved. Our trainer, our SID, everybody. And it's not because we make them, it's because we've created a culture that they want to be involved. That we go to Coach Washington's house and, like the trainer, the strength coach, his wife and their kids are there too. Not for the whole time maybe, but they feel invested in the program. They want to be around, they want to get to know the recruits. It only helps you when they're all there, down the road a little bit. But again, from the feedback that we got from the girls on the team was, I came to campus and I just felt right at home. Well, that was by design because that's how our program operates. Everybody's around all the time, and they want to. Not every situation has a strength and conditioning coach only for their team. I understand that, and I walk into NDSU and I've got to share my strength and conditioning coach with other sports. But I'm still getting invited to be around. I still want her to be part of the program, give her gear, get her on board. And if she can't come to an official visit because she's training somebody else, that's fine. But she's part of it. She's speaking to the athletes when they come on campus anyway. So again, it's a team attempt, not just, well, she's your recruit, so you're going to deal with her. How much do we feed into a kid's ego versus how much do we speak to them to get to know them, for them to know that we care about them? And that can be a little bit daunting at times. You're like, I don't want to just keep telling her how great she is and send her all these personal mailers and do all this stuff just for her. Like, she's going to get a big head, and we don't need her to have a bigger head than she already has. I understand that, and you don't want to go too far down that path. But at the same time, our philosophy was we are recruiting every single person individually. And what are your strengths? What are your interests? What are your desires? What are you going to need help with? What are your parents' fears about you coming all the way to Penn State? Is it that it's cold? Is it that you're not going to be able to get home regularly on the weekend? Whatever it is, address each and one of those things for them right off the bat. And everybody is treated differently in our system, or in our program. And with that, there are negatives. There are hurdles that each individual family has to cross. We address those right up front. Because we knew what they were, we addressed what they were, because if we didn't, we knew somebody else was, and we had no control over then what that message was going to be. So if it's distance, if it's weather, if it's the conference, if it's your position, if it's who else is coming in the class, whatever it may be, we addressed it in a way that we thought was appropriate without magnifying it, but addressing it and kind of controlling what the hurdles may be so other people couldn't blow them out of proportion or couldn't make a bigger deal out of it than we really thought it was going to be.
So Felicia called me, I believe it was, I just landed deep south, and I went to Iowa, I'm a Hawkeye, Felicia, so she always says, anything you need, I got you. I'm like, yeah, what's up? She says, I need you to speak at a symposium. Go next week. And I was like, sure, about what? She goes, well, what? You're the best one of the best in the country. And literally, I'm on my phone, F hurts, on my phone, I go, what's that? I'm clueless. So I really appreciate all the things that people have said, but the first thing I want to say, it's not me, it's my staff. It is totally my staff. It's amazing what you can do, what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. And I have an awesome staff. And it's not Shannon recruited this person, Jenny, Tony, Corey. It's a group effort, just like Martin's saying. It's totally about the staff that we have. When it comes to staff, cohesion and communication, top priority. You have to be able to communicate and communicate effectively, and you have to really not care who gets the credit. One thing I love about my staff is, for example, we just had a commitment from a young kid in the 15 class, and earlier on, Tony said, hey Shannon, can you try, I'm not really getting through, can you try this kid? Sure, I'll try, can you take this one? Let's flip-flop here. No one really cares because at the end of the day, they're gonna be on the same team. And we're all about teamwork, we're all about doing this together, and accomplishing one goal. Know your staff's strengths and weaknesses. So again, when it comes to communicating with a recruit, for example, I have a kid on our team, 6'9", Savannah Trapp. She's a redshirt freshman. I was talking to her, we're in the recruiting process, and she's talking about, I'm having lunch on an Instagram picture, I'm having lunch with my new friend. It's a bumblebee. Tony, here, you take the nature kid. H&M Forever 21, bring it my way. I can talk that all day, but nature and running through the snow, I can't do it. So know your staff strengths and weaknesses. Jenny, for example, loves talking on the phone. I'm one of those kind of catch-all people. You know, I can kind of like do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Tony, very good with systems and with coaches. Jenny loves talking on the phone. Corey's very relational. I'll do what you need me to do, but I'm not trying to get on the phone. I will talk to my recruits. All these coaches, you can have them. Sorry, this being honest here, we're family, right? I'm not big on talking to all these coaches, but Jenny, her on the phone, make camp calls, to get teams there. Jenny's your girl. Me, not so much. I'll create a cool mail out for you. I'll create some brochure, but just know your staff strengths and weaknesses. And again, like Aaron was saying, it's buy-in from the complete staff. The complete staff. It's our trainer. It's the SID. It's marketing. We have a lot of times, and Carol probably knows this. She's good friends with Corey. We have more meetings than you can imagine. I can't be worked on because we're in a meeting, but it's so helpful. We have all-in staff meeting once a month, where it's literally everyone. It's academic support services. It's the donor relation. Everyone knows exactly what's going on in everyone's own arena. So when it comes to bringing a recruit on campus, everyone knows exactly what's going on, and we're all on the same page. So as Martin also touched on, I'm gonna go quickly here for time's sake. Recruiting philosophy, strategy, and strengths. Know what you guys are all about. Do you recruit in large numbers or small numbers? We're small. Where our strength is building relationships. Our strength is also player development. So for us, we recruit very small. You have to know, do you want to have large numbers? I know for some programs, when I'm out there recruiting, I feel like some of these programs are in on every kid in the country. I don't know how. I don't know how they do it. We're going to be in on maybe 5 to 10, where they're in on 30. That's not the way we recruit because we are very relational, so we have to keep the numbers very small. Are you in-state, are you regional, are you national? We tend to be in-state and then have a national presence. Just what's your strategy for recruiting? How do you offer your scholarships? I know some programs will offer a scholarship to any and everyone, and they'll deal with the fact they don't have enough at the end. We want to recruit in a much more honest way, so we recruit first come, first serve, or we may also recruit in such a way that says you have first come, first serve until this deadline, or we may say that this kid, we have one of the best players in the country, Katie Samuelson. She has one until, if it takes her until the end of her senior year, well wait. Sometimes you have this kind of kids, you gotta be willing to save a scholarship for them. So you gotta figure out what strategy you're gonna use, and it may change year to year. But we also give out, when we say first come, first serve, it's by position. So if I'm gonna say first come, first serve, we need a guard and 2 posts. It's first come, first serve for the guards, and then for the posts, not this free for all because you end up with 4 guards, 100%. So just make sure you know how you're doing that. How do you use your days? Who used all 112? Yeah. How are you using your days? I think that's critical as well. You too? Some people I learned can't count too. So I'm not quite sure. I have learned that in business, but how are you using your days? What's your strategy for junior home visits and official visits? I mean, did I throw anyone off this year besides me? Just counting the days and making sure ahead of time that you had enough. I got to January and said, oh, wait a minute, slow down. You're trying to use 7 evals on some of these kids. It may not happen because we have to get to these homes. Are you doing a second visit in the spring? Did you do one in the fall? All these days all of a sudden count. I don't know how you felt about it, but I thought we could use like 140 days. But that's just me. You must understand, as Lauren also stated, what you want and what you need. What do you want versus what you need, and what you want versus what your staff can coach. We celebrate women in being able to be beautiful, being able to be a great student, and also being able to handle business on basketball court. Another part of our branding, for example, you've heard of 3D, we call it 3E. So this is like the lead slide of our PowerPoint presentation for the home visits, but 3E, and we talk about just living, you're gonna do life at UCLA in 3E. It's the UCLA education, world-class experience, and purposeful exposure. When it comes to branding, what's critical is that you do not let what you do not have stop you from getting what you want, okay? As John Wooden would say, and I use a lot of his quotes, obviously, because he's a Bruin, do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. So much of it has to do with how you frame things. I'm not sure if many of you would know UCLA leads the country in the number of national championships won. 110 is where we stand right now. We don't have one. Women's basketball, and I believe it's one other program, football. I believe it's football does not have a national championship. So we feel like when you walk around UCLA, you have Olympians, you have these national championship players and coaches, but we got to carry our weight. So what do? We flipped it. This is a side view of just one wall of the Hall of Fame, where all the trophies are stored, and it's a beautiful place. You see, imagine 110 national championship trophies. Right there, it's empty. So we deemed it the empty space, right? We're like, okay, you come here for this reason. So if you ask Jordan Canada right now, why'd you come to UCLA? She'd grab her phone and she'll say, for this empty space. So it's all about how you frame things. Because who's seen the movie 8 Mile? Correct, the Eminem 8 Mile? Mm-hmm. Final scene, right? Final rap. And he said everything about himself that his opponent could possibly think of saying. That's my approach to it. I'm gonna get it out there before you can use it against me. Let me frame it myself, because guess what, if you don't do it, your opponents will. Someone's gonna frame it for you, so you may as well handle it yourself. We also talked about blazing a trail. Do you wanna blaze a trail, or do you wanna just go ahead and get the baton that someone passes to you? And we're okay. If that's what you wanna do. If you wanna go to a place that's already done it, that's great. We're not knocking it. We're not knocking it at all. If you wanna go somewhere that hasn't done it, and you wanna be a part of the first, because at some point, someone helped that program get on the market, help win the national championship. Some of these kids, for example, they know Skylar Diggins, they know Maya. They don't know like Rebecca. Don't forget like Tina Thompson and Cheryl Miller and those people. They don't know just people from 10 years ago. But you have to remind them that someone took the chance and took the risk. Are you that kind of kid? Because if you're not, you need to be here anyway. But the thing is, you have to be willing, when you sell out that way, to be okay with losing a kid. We're okay with it. If you don't want to do this because it's going to be hard, then this is not the place for you. But you have to be able to back that up and support it and be okay when someone says, yeah, I can't do it. Because the ones that can't do it, well, we can get them. Bottom line. And I'll deal with open. But like I asked a parent the other day, or a coach, I said, does she want to come west? Is she willing to leave the state? And she said, well, she's kind of concerned, it's kind of far. I'm like, I cannot move the state. There's some things I can do, but I cannot move UCLA and I cannot move the state. So some hurdles, it's not worth trying to jump over. Period. School visits. Have great school visits. If you go there and you meet with the coach and you watch a game, that's good. If you go to a game and meet with the coach, the guidance counselor, the AD principal, better. But the best ones is when you really get down and dirty. You talk to the janitor, the secretary, jump back. On the personalized approach, a couple things you need to think about would be, what's the most effective way to use your time to recruit the prospect? Just because you can call and text every day doesn't mean you need to do it. Is that effective? Do they open their mail? You create this really cool mail out. I had already had a commitment from Monique Billings, and I went just to have a contact with her, hang out with her, and we made this really cool Essence magazine cover. And she loved Slim Cash, and she loved Candace Parker, and I have her on the cover with these people, and it was awesome. It took me like 3 days to get it finalized. And she's like, I said, you get the cover? She said, what cover, coach? Are you serious right now? Where's your mail? And there's lunch, and I'm like, open that one. I've been there 2 weeks. And we're trying to deal on these. Are they opening their mail? Now, when it comes to mail, just a little sidebar, when I go into the home, my objective, I want to see our mail on the door, on the refrigerator somewhere. And then I'm seeing who's on the door with me and what are they doing. So just make sure they're actually opening your mail, because if they make them talk about it, get them to talk about it on the phone or text about it. Otherwise, don't waste your time. What social media outlet do they use the most? Are they on Twitter? Are they Instagram? Study their Instagram page. Study their Twitter. I found out someone's favorite Bible verse. Bam, no app. You can get all kinds of information from Instagram. Are they a head coach kid? Are they assistant are some coaches like that as well. I'm all for if you want to talk to the head coach. And what's the best way to connect with parents and others in the circle of influence? Is it email? Is it over the phone? Is it text? And find out, are the parents on social media? I hope not, but are they on social media? Other thoughts and ideas? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, bare minimum. We got to make sure that not only you, but your program has all of those media outlets. We created a website because we want our own autonomy. The university or the athletic department, they would update when there was a full story, when they had time, but we wanted content. We know that we put it on Facebook, but it gets buried, right? As you put information, it just keeps moving further down. So we just got a website, and it's $100. $100 to start up, no big deal. And you just tell it to I tell it to my boss, I'm like, hey, it's gonna cost $100, can I get your credit card? Do one of those numbers. But it's been one of the best things because we put videos on there. We make videos constantly, and we put stuff about our players. It's just a great place to send people for information about your program. So when it comes to all these mail outs and social media and things like that, who has time? I know I don't have time. We need to recruit, and we need to, more importantly, need to develop our players and be there for our players. So we get cheap labor. We get student workers. We use work study and hire these young people. So we have some that's just working on ACS inputting data information. Some, like if you have Adobe or Photoshop experience, they help create things. We hired someone part-time just for graphics. So we can only pay him 17 hours. He comes in, puts in his time. He manages our social media. We have someone that comes in, he helps with our video person. He helps break down film. He has a full team of like 4 or 5 people of interns that come in. Some kids just want experience. Some people just want to be connected to your program. Are you getting free labor or cheap labor to help you meet your goal? Other thoughts? Our best recruiters are the players and the recruits. I believe Notre Dame is one of the best at this on social media. You'll see Brianna Turner talking to other recruits about coming to Notre Dame. You can get your recruits to recruit for you. Or say Caldwell, she was the first one to commit. We say, go get your teammates. Go get your teammates. Help them help you. We have our players. We can't tell our players to do anything, but we can sure say, here's some handles. Here's some handles to some kids that want, if you're interested. We cannot instruct them to do anything, but use your players, especially your young ones. Those are the ones that are still pretty connected to you and haven't been affected by the older kids who really don't want to do the business and all the recruiting stuff, but they're anxious. For example, we have a couple of kids coming, juniors, coming next week, and I already called our signees. Already checked compliance, folks. I'm good, okay? But they're coming to help out on a visit. They're coming, they're like, sure, coach, can't wait, I'll be there. Of course I'm there. Because they're so on fire and so excited. So you have to use your recruits and your young players. Early commitments always help. And for me, Dr. John Wooden, never lie, never cheat, never steal. Recruit with honesty and integrity. Recruit and just stay the course. Because you're going to get some, you're going to win some, and you're going to lose some. But the fact of the matter is, each year we kept building. We just kept building. Our first year was, I think, God-given with Naira Fields and Carrie Corver, one of the best shooters in the country, and Lauren Holiday. Next year, we got in the homes of Kendall Cooper and Dara Cheatham, Lene Harper. We didn't get them, but you just keep doing your part, and people keep hearing your name. It's gonna happen. But always recruit honesty and integrity. That's the biggest thing I could always tell you, because it will come back to you, and you want it to come back to you in a positive way. And just some ideas, not info, but just some of our Instagram images that we use. And a lot of times, we get a 2-for-1. So if I'm having them create an Instagram image, I have everything created in a square. This fits Instagram perfectly, which can go on Twitter, which can go on Facebook, but these also go in the mail. So I kind of just duplicate everything that we have. They're like in the game social media blocks. And all we do is throw the letterhead, and we're good to go. Right?
Well, we will open up the floor for any questions.
I have a question.
Fire away.
You put so much work in the recruiting, and then you have a kid that commits, and they say something that they're not supposed to say on Twitter, or they do something. How do you deal with that part? They've already committed. Either one of them.
You mean not about your, when you said something,
Yeah,
not about your program, but just about like
they committed to your program.
Right.
And you
Right.
do search your
Right.
your evaluate their Twitter account and so forth, social media. How do you deal with that kid after they committed to you? Because prior to it, they haven't committed,
Sure,
and they
sure.
do that. It's a kind of
We had a situation like that over the last summer, and the young lady, was just kind of inappropriate, a little bit immature, and it was a conversation with one of the assistants that we felt had the best relationship with her to kind of have a hard discussion, and why did you do it? And that's not something that we want to represent ourselves or you when you're here. This isn't a deal breaker, but her situation was not. But why are you doing this? And let's help frame you and help you grow and mature that, at the end of the day, that's not what you want people to think about you. So let's think about that when we put it out on social media. We talk all the time about how this is not a diary. This is just, I think we all have those conversations. Kind of as a sidebar there, we also have we have had our director of HR or somebody come in and talk to our kids about when they are hiring, not our kids, but when they are hiring, what they're looking for in just the general population. There's always a huge career fair at Penn State, like ridiculously large. And so we have those people that are on campus interviewing, potential employees all the time. So we had somebody like that, one of those headhunters come in and talk to our players about, what they look for in hiring people. That's, similar to what we're looking for, or looking at when we are recruiting, but also kind of, if they're doing that for the people that they're gonna hire, they can do that for you too. Or the WNBA can do it, or, an agent who might want to represent you overseas can do it. Just kind of being aware of who you are in the social world. Again, it wasn't a deal breaker in our situation, so we could have a heart to heart and help her see why this wasn't a good decision. But I would assume that it might be a deal breaker that you can't be so nice about. But
I think they're kids. We have to remember that sometimes. So typically, if we have a kid that's committed, we're going to build a relationship and have no problem going right to them and saying, you need to take that down. And talk through it, of course, but the end result means you need to take that down. Because we're just getting them ready for what's going to happen anyway, because I don't know about you, but our compliance, they monitor all the kids, their social media accounts anyway. So just getting them prepared for it and just remind them that they're not a reflection of themselves anymore, but they're already a reflection of our program. And we're bringing them into that family, even though they haven't even signed yet, but we're saying that if you put it out there and announce on social media, it's going to announce you're part of our family. And this is how we conduct ourselves. We just have a very straight to the point conversation.
I think if you've done, to kind of piggyback up, I think if you've done your homework correctly and you've recruited them the right way, they want to please you. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'll take it down right now. And I'll take down the 4 other ones too. You're like, whoa, like, like you can be yourself.
Cancel my account.
Right. I will never be on Facebook in my life. It's like, no, that's not what we're saying. But if you've done if you've done it the right way leading up to it, kids, for the large majority of them, they want to please us. They don't want to disappoint. Like, most kids don't want to disappoint their parents or, a coach they've just committed to.
Laura?
Hi. I think this kind of affects both of you. Kind of regional recruiting. I know you, Shannon, were at Duke on the East Coast, then you moved to the West, and more you're going to the Midwest.
Very regional, yeah.
Definitely, I think you have to change your approach to the kids. So I'm curious, because like the new assistant, what kind of things did you change, like your thought processes? Did it really even change at all? Or you have to really know what you're doing for your school specifically?
I think for me, obviously I came from an East Coast school, large school, Big Ten, established program, to a non-established program in the Midwest. You all don't even know where Fargo is. I get it, I do. So yeah, to me, the way I'm going to go about it has to change, but not the big picture as far as the type of kids that I want. I'm not going to get the kids that are going to go to Penn State, but I can get their mid-major versions, if that makes sense. But I'm not, like Shannon said, go in-state and then have a national presence. There is not a national presence for NDSU. Like, are we crazy? Not one kid from Atlanta is ever going to come to Fargo. I'm never going to ask her to. She's going to be miserable, and we're not going to have a good situation. So I know where I have to recruit, and I have to tailor it to that area. I think one thing that'll be very different for me, and I'm very excited about, is at Penn, we go to Penn State. None of those kids, they all have aspirations of playing overseas, playing the WNBA, like being much bigger than just their college experience. At NDSU, these kids, none of them are going to play the WNBA. They know that, I know that, that's fine. But a lot of them are going to live in the place that they go to college. So in our level, in our conference, where do you want to live? Do you see yourself living in some of these towns? Do you see yourself living in Fargo? That's a huge draw for us. That's a huge positive for us. I'm going to play that up like none other. If you can get over the fact that it's in Fargo, North Dakota, and you come up there, oh my gosh, this is a lot bigger than I thought it was. Oh my gosh, there's this, there's that. Like, it's like a suburb of Minneapolis. Yeah, it is. You just didn't think that. I'm going to play that up wholeheartedly because that's different than what the rest of our conference has, the cities that they're located in. So that's exciting to me. That's something we had. I mean, you want to come to Linden State College? Because they're like, absolutely not. But that wasn't, they're not trying to they have other aspirations after their 4 years. Not rooting themselves and developing a relationship and being in that town. I don't know if that answered your question, but there's certainly things that, from a big picture of who I am as a person, the things I believe in for my players, for the people on my staff, the people I want to be around, those don't change. But finding them at a mid-major level in the Midwest is a little bit different. But I'm not going to compromise academic integrity, character integrity. I'm not going to, that's who I am. That's what I want to help. But we can curtail it to fit the region.
I think it's both and. I think what we forget sometimes that we are our own brand. That each person here has their own brand. So your brand's going to follow you wherever you go. And so with that brand, use your connections, right? You may have some kids that you will or coaches that think that Laura Harper is amazing, and I would love to send one of my kids to you. And this kid lives in, Alaska, I don't know, but you make connections all over the country or in your region. So you leave Maryland and you go to Arizona. And you have enough connections there that trust you because you are your own brand. And then of course it is that program. It is selling out to the vision of that head coach. And then of course, do you have a lot in your state? Some states don't have a lot of really great basketball players. And there's some states that okay, they all can't go to the schools here in Texas. Texas is loaded to me. It's like they all can't go to school there, or in California, these places. So can you find your way in those states? So when we talk about national presence, for us it's still hard. UCLA is a world-renowned university, but I still can't get some kids to come that far. And there's some kids that can't wait to leave, like Savannah Trapp, Esco, Minnesota. It's about this big. She couldn't wait to get to the sun. So I kind of look at those cold weather states and say, hey, sunny California is 85 in December. So it's just knowing, and then Texas, okay, what programs, what kid is most likely to want to leave. So I think you have your own brand, you have connections, you take those where you go, then you have to look at the school. Are there kids in this state? Then if not, then scan into the region.
Johnny from South Georgia. Both of you talked about everyone on your staff recruits everyone. And if both of you speak to, in that case, there's still a point person. When you need to get the transcript or get information, who is the point person? How do you decide? Is it my class? I know you guys had my class. You did one class, somebody else did another class. Can you just speak to how you guys delegate a point person for kids, even though everyone recruits everybody?
Of course, we do have, each coach may have, say we're recruiting September 1, we start over. Say we have 30 kids. All 3 of us have 10 kids. And you are responsible for all the information that goes out. If you want me to call your kid, you need to tell me to call your kid. And then we'll reassess, we'll see where we are. Are the relationships working? Are we getting anywhere with that kid? Okay, let's switch it out. I'll take it. It could be, for example, Jenny works well with Elbert Kinneberg from Cal Sparks. I don't really deal with Elbert that much. She has a good relationship with him, but I still have a couple of his kids. So it's my responsibility to talk to the kids, the parents of just that particular kid. But Jenny handles the club coach, but I'm still responsible for that head coach. I just know that Jenny has a relationship with the club. I deal with high school and manage my list of just kids. And we'll always reassess, reevaluate, we need to switch things out. It's your responsibility to come in each week. I want Corey on the phone with such and such person, and things of that nature. There's always a point person for each kid.
Our point person, if we're gonna use that word, kind of finds itself. The way we did it at Penn State was by years. So Kia was in charge of the current junior class. I was in charge of the odd numbers. Fred was in charge of the even numbers, graduation years. And so obviously we're always looking further down, and then we pass it on to Kia, sort of, if that makes sense. And then the tasks within the office, as far as a call list, a writing list, a high school, getting transcripts, getting high school schedules, getting AU schedules, those were all divvied up amongst us assistants. So like I did the writing list. So I was in charge of who was writing to who, what the content was, the writing calendar for the whole year. I didn't create every mailer. I got the intern to do all that, but I was in charge of, after this game, you gotta get this out. Prior to the homecoming, we gotta get this out. Prior to, whatever it may be. So Kia would give us a call list. She knew, based on our conversations, I can call the high school coach every day for a week. They are not gonna return my call. Fred texts, hey, what's up? He gets a call immediately. Like, that's how I get point. Like, they kind of established their own point people based on just the relationships that, that could be fostered. We would work diligently to make sure it didn't just turn into Fred's kid then. But they kind of gravitated toward what worked best for that area or that line of communication, if that makes sense. But within like the bigger picture of everything that has to get done, we all had our tasks, and I wasn't a fan of gathering high school schedules. That was not my favorite thing to do. It just wasn't. I'll talk to my AU coach, I'll get those, just, high school schedules are a pain in the butt because they don't have them done, and they don't have control of them, and that was somebody else's strength, or that didn't bother them. But we all had our parts.
Thank you.
Question for Shannon about the website you guys have. We tried.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Make sure you say your name.
Oh, I'm Christine, I'm for assistant assessment. We tried proposing to have a website like you said, but we had issues with our compliance that sort of just shut it down right away. And they said their reasoning was it would be too hard to manage the content, and if we were following, I don't know, did you run into any issues like that, or any suggestions on how to?
We ran into issues
on that?
with more sports information.
Okay.
It was because they want to send all information to uselightwomen's.com. That's what, they don't want us working against each other, like a house divided against itself. But what we did, make sure we did, is that, for example, if you go to the camp tabs on it feeds back to uselightwomen's.com. So a lot of things still feed there, but when it came to content, football had one. My thing is football doesn't. Football doesn't. So we didn't have issues with compliance. It was more so sports information. And when they saw that we're not a threat, just unless you want to do something every single day, once knocking on your door every single day, then why can't we do this? And so there were some rules we had to consider. It could be, for example, with the video, you can't have more than 3 minutes of Pac-12 footage in a highlight video. There's certain things we had to know going into it, but we didn't run into any other problems with compliance. Just keep, they know me by name, by face, by, oh gosh, she's coming.
Yeah, none of our other sports have one, so when we brought the idea, they
Mhm.
were like, it was like, we did our website, and then they turned into, well, now every team has to have a website, and now
But is it illegal?
no, I just have compliance apparently, but hold on.
I always go back to this.
Penn State have it in your conference, you're good.
In our conference? No. I mean, you have one?
You said you were at Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Penn State has one, laylines.com. You can do it.
That's always my fallback. I'll give a list of people doing what. If it's not illegal, then why are you trying to stop me?
Right.
You might not like it,
Right.
but you can do it.
If I had worked to just monitor.
And that's the thing. Like we have one too, and it was the same thing. Like, well, then we're going to bring you, upload this. Why, and then they get tired of doing it. And they're like, okay, fine, you can have your own.
You can go ahead.
Corey Miller, Edwards College. Just want to know, both of you, what are your
saying at North Dakota State is it gets cold and you still have to go to school. So, you know, being committed to the academic part, and that's different for every program, you know, what that looks like or what your program is. Good people, and again, that can, I mean, these sound very generic, but they're very unique to what, you know, you define what a good person is. And there's plenty of people that we would, I don't say plenty, there are a handful of very, very talented kids that we would bring to police, and she'd say, that's not my kid, I'm not dealing with that issue, I'm not dealing with that scenario. That doesn't make the kid a bad kid. She knows what she can handle and what she wants to handle versus what she doesn't. So like, I guess that's where the good kid part comes in. Well, you know, it can be different. Maybe not a non-negotiable, but definitely high on the list is, are they a winner? I think that's and I think walking into this NDSU program that won 6 games last year, 2 versus Division 2, because we won 4. I'm very, very concerned about surrounding the program with winners. And that can look different. You know, not everybody can win the national championship, and that's not my expectation, but coming from winning high school programs, coming from winning AAU programs, and we kind of talked about that earlier today, you can't convince somebody how to win. They have to know how to win. You can accelerate it, you can feed into it, but you can't start from scratch. Whether it's just win a conference championship, be on an all-state team, you know, like something, you know, they have to be good, but they have to be a part of a winning culture if you want to have a winning culture at any place.
I think so I know for us, you have to have a growth mindset. And be willing to be challenged in areas on and off the court. As I mentioned before, we look at a young lady as a woman, person, student, athlete. We have to be willing to grow in all 3 areas. Our philosophy is pretty straightforward: mentor, teach, and equip. So if you don't want to grow in those areas, you don't have to have a growth mindset, you have a fixed mindset, you're not going to be successful here. It's not a good fit for either one of us, because we are going to challenge you to grow on and off the court. If it's the number of community service hours we do, if it's academically at UCLA, you have to have a growth mindset. And even before, that's once we get into the whole recruiting, we know, hey, we're potentially looking at you, you're looking at us, we're looking at each other. Before that, it's disrespect. So I'm okay with a kid being immature and trying to figure it out. If a coach is, oh, they're immature, she's growing, I get that. But if you just feel disrespectful to the coach, and the coach has nothing positive to say about it, then I cut you in a heartbeat. If you can't make it past half court, you don't play offense, I'll cut you in a heartbeat. It's just some things, you gotta have a work ethic. Those are things before you get to that point of being recruitable that are non-negotiables, like the work ethic. That's huge disrespect. But once we get to a place where we don't question those things, it's more so, do you have a growth mindset, and are you a winner? And the last one would be, are you a good teammate?
And unfortunately, we have run out of time for questions, but thank you so much. A hand for Shannon is Barnes. Great information shared. And please continue to share with your colleagues via Twitter, #StepUp2014. Also, if you did not have an evaluation in your notebook and need them, I have some here. So see me as we are transitioning, and that's what we are about to do, is transition to our other session. Yes.
In my contact information on the bottom of my handout is the right email address. If you go on the front page of or one of the front pages of your book, it has my Pennsylvania phone number. I don't know who will answer it when you call it, so don't call it. But I can give you, if you want to talk, I can give you my cell phone, not a problem. This is the right email. Sorry.
Thank you guys for making that information available. So we'll get ready to transition, and your next session is next door.
Again, Tasha filled in for us at the last second. She's done a wonderful job since she's been here. 17 years of coaching experience. She's also been an assistant at Wisconsin and Western Michigan. And to the left of her is Mr. Al Brown. He needs no introduction. We know Mr. Al Brown. He's been with us for 5 years. Step Up. Guru, should I say? So Al Brown and Tasha McDowell, they're going to be here and should give you a great insight. So, welcome.
Just want to thank Felicia and Johnny for the opportunity to be here. She called me last week right before we got on the road and said, hey, can you fill in? And I said, sure. And she was like, okay, give me your outline by Monday. I said, okay, can we have Tuesday? I'm about to take off for the recruiting weekend, and got it done. And, you know, I don't know why she called me. She could have called any of you. The question I have for you, if she called you, would you have been ready in 3 days? Now, I know we got food in front of us, so don't spill it. But I got a question for you. If anybody in this room, whoever in this room feels like they're on their way to becoming the best assistant, stand up. The best assistant you can be, stand up. Stand up, just in general, the best assistant you can be. On your own merit. Now stay standing if you're the best assistant on your staff. All right, everybody have a seat. Now my question is whether you stayed standing or sat down, who's the judge? Who's judging who's the best assistant? And this is where I would challenge you. If you're the judge of whether you are or not the best assistant, then it's going to be skewed either way. And so my challenge to you is to not just work at being the best assistant, but work at being the most versatile assistant that you could be. Versatile. Because if you're classifying the best, who is the judge of that? And once you become, or you, as you continue to work on becoming the best or the most versatile assistant that you could be, then work on becoming the best assistant for your head coach. The best assistant for the team. And that's always going to change. And that's my point right there. Whether you're the best, it's going to change depending on the program that you're in. And it's about being the best assistant for the team. If you're great in one area and you're lousy in another, they need you to be strong in that area, it's not going to help. If you're the best player and you shoot your team out of a game when at that point you're getting double teamed and triple teamed and you need to be a better passer, then you're not the best player for the team at that time. And that's what we're working on, being versatile. We've been gone for a couple days. Some of you left Thursday like me. Some of you left Friday. If you have not gotten a text message via iMessage, regular text message, group message from somebody on your staff, there's a problem there. Because if you're a versatile assistant, you're going to be needed. Your presence, your absence should be felt. Somebody needs to be calling you. If you're gone today talking about, hey, how do we do this? We're thinking about doing this. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts on this? If you're not getting any text messages while you're out of the office, that's a problem. And I would suggest at that point, you start to work on being a versatile assistant, that your absence is felt, that they need you around. And the more versatile you are, the more of an asset you are. Our head coach, Jamel Elliott, tells us all the time, you need to be the assistant that I can't do without. Be that assistant. It's kind of like that player that can only shoot. Well, if they don't let you get any shots off, you can't stay in the game because you're just a shooter, you can't defend. And if you can't get the shots off, you can't be in the game. But if you can play the 1, 2, 3, and the 4, we just move you around. You stay on the floor. So all of this is going to tie into scouting preparation. You're in the right place. We're still talking about scouting. And it's going to tie in. If you're following along with my outline, this goes into the pregame talk, so to speak. Being the best assistant for the team, for the program. The second thing I want to tell you in our kind of like pregame warm-up is operate with a head coach's mentality. You're an assistant, but your thinking should be with a head coach's mentality. What do I mean by that? As assistants, we all have our specialized area. We're constantly thinking about the little details of everything. As a head coach, they're thinking the whole perspective. They're thinking globally and what needs to happen next. It irritates me more than anything if I'm in a meeting with my head coach and she asks me a question without me, and she beat me to the punch where I didn't say what needs to happen next. That bothers me. I want to be the first one to bring that up. Coach, hey, next week this is happening. We need to move with this. All right, recruiting's happening in 3 weeks. We need to make sure that we get these flights. This is happening. We need to make sure that you're in this area. She shouldn't be coming to us or your head coach, she or he, with reminders. We should beat them to the punch. And if we're thinking like a head coach, then we're thinking about what should happen next and not just what's happening in the right now. Because most of us want to be head coaches, and if that's the case, then when you become head coach, and take it from me, I was an assistant for 13 years. I was a head coach for 4. I'm back to being an assistant, and I realized more than ever how much I didn't know that I thought I knew. And when you're the head coach, and this is something I want to throw in for free right now, when you're a head coach and you put on that title and you're carrying around that 60-pound weight of pressure, and your assistants are around saying, we should do that, we need to do that, you don't know what you're talking about, kick that kid off, do this, and you have no responsibility to the decisions that are being made or the consequences that could happen, you don't understand that as an assistant coach. You don't understand that until you walk in those shoes and understand the weight. So our job as assistants is to make sure that we take some of the pressure off the head coach, think like a head coach, be ready with suggestions and solutions, not just problems, okay? The other thing, and again, this all ties in, know your strengths. Know your strengths, especially when it comes to scouting. If you know it takes you about 4 or 5 hours to make it through one film, then you need to plan for that. And you only got 2 days, then you need to plan your time accordingly. If it only takes you 2, then plan your time accordingly. But you need to know what your strengths are. If you're not very good at presenting, then you need to work on that, okay? But I'm gonna digress for just a little bit, and I'm gonna tell you that before you ever even present a scouting report, you have already won and lost your kids before November even happens. You have to know your stuff. And kids know off the bat which coaches know the game and which coaches don't. So when they arrive on campus and you're working with them, and you're fumbling through stuff, and you're telling them different things every time you're with them, or you're not quite sure, or you lack the confidence, they know. And so you're either going to win their confidence or lose their confidence as soon as they get on campus. And then when November hits, you're going to stand in front of them, and you're going to try to tell them why they should believe you on how you should win a game. It's not going to happen. So we have to, as assistant coaches, know our stuff. And as soon as they step on campus, we are going to present to them confidently and coach them confidently so that they build that trust. And when it's time to go over the game plan, there's no question. They believe you. They believe you. We played UConn, and I'm going to refer to them a lot, and they beat us every time. They beat everybody in the country, 40-0 every time, by like 40 plus. But every time we took the floor versus UConn, they believed that we could win. And we're going to talk about measurable goals and things like that. But they believed that we could win because of how it was presented to them. They believed it. We didn't. We never did. But they believed it. All right? So make sure we know our stuff so that when it's time to stand before them, assistant coaches, they're willing to walk through a wall. They believe you blindly because it's not how much you know, it's what you can make them believe. I venture to say, even if you don't know much, and I don't recommend that, but if you stand before them confidently, they believe you. They were like, Coach, that didn't happen that way. They play all zone. You said man to man. Oh, it's all right. Just go back out there. They believe you. All right? But we've got to know our stuff and then be able to present it to them confidently. Anybody read the book, The 5 Love Languages? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. So Al and I, we've been having this off chat love affair. So I'm gonna use him as a example. In the 5 love languages, it talks about how people want to be loved, and this is going to tie in a second. If Al and I are dating, and his love language is acts of service, and mine is quality time, okay? And I keep trying to love Al by just spending time with him, but I never do anything for him. I never pick up his dry cleaning, and I never go get him dinner, make him dinner, and Al, he doesn't spend quality time with me. If we're back and forth and our love languages don't match, it's not going to work. Right? Would you agree? He's not going to feel loved because I'm not loving him the way he should be loved or what makes him feel loved. And he's not loving me the way I should feel loved. And that's the same relationship you have with your head coach. You have to know what your head coach wants and how they want it. How does that tie into scouting reports? If you put together a 70-page scout and you throw it on their desk and you start to go through all that stuff and your head coach don't want all that, she has shut you out. She doesn't want to hear that. So know your strengths, know how your head coach wants her information. My head coach, Jamel Elliott, she wants it in about 10, 15 minutes. You get past that and you just over talking it, you've lost her. So I know when I go into her office, I've got to be prepared, I've got to be concise, I've got to give it to her in a way that she wants it, and then I've got to move on, okay? So know what your head coach wants. If you don't know, ask her, how do you want this to be presented? Know what she wants. And know your team. And we're going to come back to some of this a little bit later. Our scouting reports range from, I don't know, 10 pages to Louisville, maybe 25, maybe 30 pages, just because of the amount of stuff that they have. Do I give that all to the players? Absolutely not. All right? But there are some times that they have to know more about some teams and less about others. UConn, they just run a continuity offense and they make plays. There ain't a whole lot to it. They've just got 9 McDonald's All-Americans. Louisville, they probably have about 200 sets. They run sets, new sets for every single different game. Okay, with about 6 that are the same. So their scouting reports are a little bit bigger. But you have to know what the IQ of your team is, what they can handle. Okay, do you give them 10 pages? Do you give them 2 pages? Do you give them 1 page? You have to know the basketball IQ of your team. You don't want paralysis by analysis, meaning that you've given them too much, all right, and they can't handle it, and now they can't play because they're thinking, all right? But I do believe that teams will rise up to the level of expectation that you set for them. Okay? So if you think they're not very smart, they won't be very smart. If you don't expect them to know much, they won't know much. If you expect them to know more, they'll grasp that and they'll know more. Okay? So you've got to know your team. Know your strengths, know your head coach and how she learns. Your job is to get her to be efficient, and then know your team. Be a student of the game. My job at the University of Cincinnati is quite a few things. I'm the recruiting coordinator. I do quite a few of the scouts. About half the scouts. I'm the defensive coordinator, and everybody's situation is different. Some head coaches don't allow assistants to talk. I've fortunately been, every program that I've been at, allowed to have a huge level of responsibility, and that's important. So when we walk in every day, she's like, yeah, I got my offensive part, you got your defensive part, and I've put together an hour of defense. That's my thing. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't talk about it as a staff, but that's my thing, and we put together the practice that way. The same thing with a scouting report. You've got to make sure that you're a student of the game and be ready to offer some suggestions. You may not have the defense as your baby, okay? You may not have the offense as your baby, but you have to be willing and ready to offer some suggestions, all right? When it's not your scout, make sure that you're being a student of the game. As soon as your scout is up, you need to be on to the next, evaluating that game that was just played, watching film with your team, and then you need to be watching film on the next opponent. Don't rest. I know it. You go 3 sleepless nights. You're like, whew, I'm glad that's out of the way. Let me rest. It can't be that. Move on to the next scout with your team and be ready to add to that. I have to. I run the defense. So as soon as my scout is over and that concludes, I move on to watching film of the next team so I can see defensively, hey, what we need to think about, all right, in conjunction with with the other assistant coach. Scout logistics. Now, I didn't tell you like the other room off the bat, but Al and I have talked. He's going to talk about a lot of the scouting stuff specifically. I'm going to go through that. I'm working on the whole logistical part outside of that for the most part, but I am going to tell you what we do, okay? So just to back up, what we covered, we talked about your strengths, your coach's strengths. We talked about being the best assistant for the team and not just the best assistant for you and who you think you need to be, because we're hired to do a job, and that needs to be what's best for the entire organization. All right? We talked about knowing your team's IQ, and now we're going to move into the scout logistics, what we do. All right? Coach Swinson, unfortunately, he has to work with 3 strong women in the office. But how many films do you usually watch, Coach?
25 to 7.
5 to 7, okay? Coach Swinson, 5 to 7 films. I watch minimum 3, 5, 6, okay? Usually it's in the 4 or 5 range, depending on how much time I have. So some of you might be more, it might be less. It's whatever you have time for. In conference play, when I'm doing every other scout is mine, I can't watch 6, 7 films. Well, I don't watch 6, 7 films, but it's probably right around 3 or 4, all of the last ones leading up to our game. All right? But we analyze that. Before I get to even watching the film, I'm a numbers person. Okay? I got a degree in math. So I analyze every piece of number that I can get my hand on, from Synergy to PDF Scouts to what was the last 5-6 box scores to what the coach said they didn't do right or what they did well in her last interview after the last game. I analyze every number I can get my hands on because it tells a story. And then after I get that story with the numbers, then I go to the film and I find out what it's not telling me. Who that great screener is. Who's that kid that's going to jump on the basketball and get after it? Who's going to be that energy player? I want to know that story next. And then it all comes together, okay? But what I challenge you to do is to don't miss an avenue for information. Don't be lazy. Get the scout notes from your SID early. See what the other team's talking about. Go back to the other team's website. See what that coach talked about in her last post game. Get all the box scores and go through them. Find out which teams score comparable to what you score, or who's similar to you, and how they played against that, even if it's not within the last 3 to 5 games. Okay? Be active and make sure that you don't miss an opportunity to gain some knowledge from something. Use all your resources. Once you do that, okay, everybody knows we start with the scout, okay? Offensive tendencies. Do they run? Is transition defense going to be important for us? Are they a quick hit, half-court team like Iowa State? Quick hit your dip, okay? Are they a team that they're going to work inside? How do they score? Is it a guard core? Is it traditional low post players? Or is it 4-out, 1-in? What are the offenses? How do they score? Guard-oriented, post-oriented. Are they getting most of their points in transition? How are they scoring? And then we figure out from there what we're going to do defensively to take it away. Now, let me tell you something. University of Cincinnati, okay, Big East, transition to the ACC, AC, all right? We were top 3 in field goal scoring percentage defense. We were top 3 in scoring defense, and we were top 5 in rebounding. With those numbers, you ought to be winning a lot of games. Well, we couldn't score. So when I'm talking about knowing your team, we struggle to score. And when 3 of our starters went out, we really struggle to score. But knowing your team, what I did know about our team is if we're holding people to 57 points a game, and we're only scoring 453, then if we can keep the game right around 55, 56, we got a chance. We got a chance. And so when you're analyzing those numbers, that's something you ought to know. Okay? And understanding where you need to be and where you need to position yourself to give yourself a chance to win. Do they press? What kind of press is it? Do they switch? Do they double inside from the post? If they do double inside from the post, who are they doubling with? Do they scramble back out? How do they rotate? Is their weak side help present? Are they late on that? Do they zone? What is it, a 1-2-2, 2-3 matchup? Stop 2-3, 1-2-2. I mean, what are they running? Do they double in the post? How are they passing over the cutters? Baseline out of bounds plays. Does the shooter take the ball out of bounds? Are they looking to run her back in for a shot? Is the post player looking to duck in? What kind of action is happening? Deep corner, special situations, jump ball. Do they have a play? What do they like to go with first? Get a sense of from that film who that team is. What do they like to go to in timeouts, free throws, when they're frustrated, when they're stressed, when the coach is going off on the team, what are they most likely to go with? And that's what scouting is about. Now, after you gather all that information, you've got to figure out what the best way is to present it to your team. And we already talked about the fact that the presentation, you either won the confidence as soon as they step on campus or you lost it. I think for the most part, besides you guys being a little tired, I would venture to say I got your attention, don't I? Raise your hand if you've been with me. I haven't bored you yet. Appreciate it, whether you're telling me the truth or not. Energy, eye contact, you have to win them over in the delivery right away. Because you know they will know that you know what you're talking about. You have to be confident, even if you're not, but you should be if you're prepared. You have to present that and deliver that in a way where they feel confident. Don't flinch. Be ready to answer the questions. They're going to have questions. Your head coach is going to have questions. The other assistants are going to have questions. Don't flinch with that. Be ready, be prepared to answer those questions. The more film you watch, the more you analyze it and think it through, the better you know that opponent, the more prepared that you'll be. The more prepared that you'll be. Don't cheat it. There are a lot of times when you've had a couple sleepless nights and you're like, they got one more game I could watch. I'm not going to watch it though. I'm tired. That might be the one game where you see something different. Don't cheat it, okay? Make sure that you give it everything you've got so that you can prepare yourself. Now, once I have all that information, like I told you before, I put together my scouting report. I don't even know if Aaron knows this. I put together my scouting report. As soon as our last game is over, my head coach has a packet. I put together a folder. Inside that folder, she's got the scouting report. She's got a pregame practice prep sheet, and I'll be real willing to email that to anybody. It's offensively, it says everything that I think that we could run to be effective versus what they do defensively. Different matchups, how they're going to defend that, what we need to do, how they defend ball screens, all of that. Defensively, what we need to do to take away what they're very good at. Then underneath that, it has posts and guards, what our guards need to work on, what our post players need to work on. The next thing that she has in that thing is a full-length practice. Okay? So I told you that I'm responsible for our defense, but I will put together an entire practice when it's my scout for 2 days. Now, she can choose to use the whole thing, which she often does, or she can choose none of it. But what that says for her is you're thinking. You're thinking about what drills need to be run. You're thinking about who the matchups are and who needs to be guarding who. You're thinking about what tendencies you need to be going over. And it's preparing you to be thinking like a head coach. Don't just give that information, put it on her desk and say, here we go, this is what I think we should do. Here it is, figure it out, okay? Put together your own practice. Even if she doesn't use it or he doesn't use it, you've done it. You've let them know you're thinking and it's gonna work for you, okay? Your development. 2 to 3 days out, again, she's getting this information right after that. The other thing I would tell you, and I forgot to tell the last group, is if you don't want to walk through all their plays, if your head coach is one that doesn't want all that stuff, the other way that you can get through it, and there's some teams that run some interesting stuff, and we do it a lot, is tendencies. Everybody in this room probably does 4-out shell, don't you? In some way, shape, or form. 4-out shell. So you can get through a lot of team stuff just by running 4-out shell. Go through the screens that they do. Go through the tendencies that they run. You don't have to send the team through every single play, but make sure that you go over the tendencies so they know what to expect. The other thing, let's go back to Louisville. They've got certain guards, tendencies that we want them to see. Coach Rokas and I, we do the guards. So a couple days out, we're usually watching with the guards. This is how she does it. This is what we need to take away. Just some clips on the guards. Coach Swinson, he's with the post player. They've got a big-time post player. This is what we need to do. This is how we can score. These are her tendencies. So they're already seeing players before they even make it to the film room with the coach. All right? And then the day before the game, they're getting their scouting reports. We're delivering it. They're seeing the film, and they're ready to go. A point I want to talk about, and some schools are in this case, is there are going to be games like UConn. Listen, UConn went 40-0 this year. Did you guys play?
We did.
40-0. Anybody else in the room play UConn? Raise your hand. Yeah? Okay. So you might be in this group with me. And UConn was a national champion this year. And I want to take credit for part of that, because we played them 3 times and they beat us all 3 times. And so I want to take a little bit of credit for the fact that they were a national champion, because we didn't take it easy on them. We didn't take it easy on them at all. And so every time we went out, our kids thought we could win. Our head coach, 6-time national champion, played for them, had them ready to go, believing that they could win. Even though they had like 9 McDonald's All-American, they believed we could contend. But it was improbable. Unless 5 of their starters fouled out or got hurt before the game, it was improbable. Now, we were realists with our team, but at the same time, we can have them believing in some of the measurable goals within that game. And so, at the end of that game, our biggest goal was not to be defeated by the game. Because when we walk out of the UConn game, we got to go on to somebody else, Louisville, Rutgers, whoever it might be. So you can't allow your team to be defeated by one game. And so when we play the Louisvilles, if we play the Marylands, if we play those teams that we really don't have a shot, just because we don't have the talent yet, we don't have the shot at beating them, okay, then we've got to give ourselves measurable goals. And at the end of that, we're going to look and see if we won our goals that we set for our team. And if you can win most of those goals, then your team is going to walk away feeling like, okay, we got better. We achieved some things. And when you are coming up, when you're not if you're at a lower BCS or a mid-major school and you're coming up against in those non-conference opponents, maybe it's a guaranteed game, maybe you guarantee to play Notre Dame, and you know it's going to hurt for about 40 minutes, okay? Give your team some measurable goals, okay? So that they walk away from that game not defeated, but feeling like they contended with a team and was able to come away with some positives. The only other thing that I really want to discuss with you before Coach Brown comes on is game time. There is, after being a head coach, there is nothing that makes a head coach mad as his assistants when there's a timeout and we run up and say, Coach Elliott, they just scored the last 2 times in transition and we turned the ball over twice and our player got 3 fouls. She can see. She knows that, but we just DVR'd the whole play for her. The whole last 4 minutes, we just DVR'd it for her and replayed it. And as assistants, we do that sometimes. We just repeat what just happened. They can see what she's looking for in that 30 seconds that she has with us are solutions. Yes, it happened. What happened? Why did it happen? Why did that backdoor cut? What was our weak side? Well, Coach, it happened because our weak side keeps sticking in Stephanie Dolson over there because they're worried about what's happening, but she's on the weak side of the floor, so we've got to make sure that we slide over and we drop so that backdoor cut doesn't happen. All right? No, our offense is not working. They're going underneath the screen. We need to look to set that screen lower, step back, look to see if we can get that shot off. Okay? We need to be bringing solutions to the head coach and not just repeating it and like I said, DVR tape. All right? And the more that you do in practice and the more confident he, she is with you, then the more responsibility and the more likely that they'll listen to you. I think I'll stop there. Okay, there's a few more things, a few more points on my outline. If you guys want anything, I'm more than happy to send you a scouting report. I've got a couple here you can look at, UConn and Louisville's, if you want to get a little something. And also I can send you our before the game or our practice prep and our post-game prep. So after our post-game recap, after every game, especially a non-conference, we go through that. We have a sheet, offensively, defensively, in the post, in the guard play. What happened? What worked? What didn't work? What do we need to do better? Was my scout accurate? Did they do what I thought that they should do? What do we need to adjust to next time? So especially with our conference opponents that we're going to see again, that happens like the day after the game. Like that night we're watching the film, I'm writing that down, I'm typing it up, I'm sitting that in the folder, okay? And at some point our staff will probably discuss it, but the next time, in about 2 weeks, the next time you play that team, then you could refer back to that.
I don't want you to look at those now, but I'll call your attention to some handouts I have back there. One is entitled the Long Scout Outline. And on that, it explains how we prepare our Long Scout. And it's an outline of how that's done. The second one is a Short Scout. This is a 2-page paper. And now I will tell you how we use those. The Long Scout is given to our coaches and to our team the night before, follow me now, the day before we play. In other words, our prep day, they have it the night before, our players do in the locker room, coaches have it that day or before, so they can read it before we practice that day. Now sometimes, because of classes and everything else, our ladies can't read it until after we've had our breakdown practice, but it's still, they are responsible for it. The Short Scout is what we use during our scouting meeting, and this information they have, they are responsible for reading it aloud as we're sitting in this meeting here. In other words, whoever was responsible for defending, I'll pick on Alyssa Thomas again, whoever was responsible for defending her would read the caption here about what Alyssa does and how she plays and maybe some of the things we need to do to try to contain her. And so we go over those 7 players in our meeting, like we're meeting right here, and they talk about all these points that are on the Short Scout. and then we watch the video of the opponent, and we watch the breakdown of each sequence of events that they have offensively, defensively, and everything else. I do the vocal part of that. Coach P chimes in occasionally, but most of it's done, I verbalize or emphasize points that we want to make as we watch that tape. And that tape runs anywhere from 12 to 20 minutes, depending on the team and depending on the time of the season. We try to shorten that as we go through the latter part of the season. But that's the purpose of these two reports. Also, I give our video person the information on this video chart. The only thing that's left off of that is we put on how to defend ball screens, how they defend ball screens rather. And that's not on here, but we go over, I give that to the video coordinator and she makes the video up. We put this in the player's locker with the long scout, and it's a sheet that shows player analysis, and the players are responsible for analyzing every conference opponent that we play or any potential NCAA opponent we play. And they have to hand this in the next day when we go over the tape of the review of our game that we just played. In other words, if we played Clemson tonight, they would have this in their locker. If we were even on the road, when they came back, they had to have that. We meet at 8 o'clock in the morning. They've got to have this filled out and all the information there. And then on the back, we compile this information as it's seen here, and keeping Clemson here as our example, we would go over this and say, before the next game, this is what you wrote in regard to the Clemson game. This is how you felt about the game as a team. These are the things we did extremely well. These are the things we didn't do very well. And this is what we expect, or these are some of the things to expect for the upcoming matchup with Clemson when we see them again. This other sheet was referred to last night by Dee Cantner. This is our official sheet. We keep this. Now, these pictures, please forgive me for those. The lady who made this up, I told her don't put any official. We put the official's picture and name in here. So it would be Dee Cantner, whoever else, Joe Blow, Sam Schwartz. They would be here so that our person keeping it knows the officials and our coaches. Sometimes I guess coaches don't know the officials. So they know, they can look and they say, oh, well, that's so-so. And we chart that. What Dee failed to mention, and she didn't know, I checked that at halftime to see how the calls are going. How many calls against us versus them, all that kind of stuff. And we mention that sometimes. And the type of calls. It's not just fouls. You run out there and say, well, it's 10 fouls to 2. Okay, I've heard that. But when you tell them, look, there's violations, you called 5 violations against us and 1 against them. Now what's going on? And they're going to stop and think, violations? My God, how do they know about that? I didn't even know they knew about violations. So there are different ways to call their attention to information without insulting them with the foul thing, which they don't want to hear. Scouting, like anything else, involves philosophy. The combination of our long scout and our short scout is a combination of philosophy developed between Coach McCauley and myself. I believe in the long scout approach. She believed in the short scout. We merged them together, so instead of having one short scout or one long scout, now you got a whole bunch of scouting information as a player. But we don't worry about that. For example, I use the classroom example, and I'm going to use 2 here. First of all, the English or history professor does not look at the students who they are going to test and say, I don't think they should read this many books. They'll be confused when the test is given to them. Well, we say, I don't think we should give them much information on the opponent. They'll be confused when they play because we've given them too much information for that playing test. And I don't buy that. Secondly, the other thing, people selectively read information anyway. Just because I give you 20 pages doesn't mean you're going to read it and get confused by it because you might not read it. Now, there are ways to find out if they read the report. We have a little game we play with our players. I will highlight words in that long scout. I will blacken certain words as you go down. It says something like "go, fight, win" or whatever. And I'll say, what do we have in that scouting report? What was the message? Go, fight, win. Okay, somebody read it. I put their name in there. I say, Bridget, give me a high five. And in the middle of this report someplace in little letters, I put, Bridget, give me a high five if you read this report. So Bridget comes to practice, she gives me a high five. She doesn't give me a high five, she didn't read the report. Or nobody read it, and then they really catch them. The point is, somebody has to read it. Now you say, well, if your buddy read it and told Bridget, hey, you better give Coach a high five because I read the report. Well, Bridget maybe didn't read it, but she gave me a high five. Somebody read it, okay? So one person reading it is better than none, in my opinion. And I tell you where I found more problems with this confusion on the part of the players. It isn't so much from the written information that they receive. It's when you present that scouting report on the floor to them physically and you stumble around with the plays that the opponent is running and they don't feel comfortable that you know what this team's doing. And I don't mean, I have sheets that I look at occasionally, but most of the time I know what they're doing and I do it from memory. But if you're, say, wait a minute, let's see now. Okay, guys, you line up over there. You line, and then I think they screen. Don't they screen over here like this? When you're doing that, your players are saying, hey, this coach is getting paid a lot of money. He's supposed to be directing me. They don't even know. They expect me to know how to defend that? And then they're going to yell at me? Well, and most young people are polite, so they don't yell at the coach. But if I was a player, I'd say, what the hell are you doing? Don't you know the plays? Can't you? I mean, you can't present it any better than that. So that, to me, is a more critical area than all of the visual or written information you give them ahead of time, because they'll sort that out one way or the other. The other thing about the length of the report is the information contained, from my perspective and see, is more educational. Part of our job is to educate these ladies on the game of basketball, how it's to be played. What's a closeout? What's it mean? And I repeat closeouts a lot. Closeout under control. Let the offensive player make the first move. I write that over and over. People say, well, you just keep repeating. Yes, I keep repeating it. I'll tell you, and I tell the players this sometimes. My mother taught 3rd and 4th grade. And she, as I grew up, she would say, Albert, that's a given name. Albert, do that. Albert. And she'd repeat it. I said, Mom, I got it. I said, you don't have to repeat it a lot. She said, I teach 3rd and 4th graders. You have to repeat things a lot. I tell our players, I'm teaching 3rd and 4th graders. You guys, I have to repeat things a lot because you apparently aren't getting them, okay? So we use it as a teaching tool. But the philosophy, whatever it is, whatever works for you. And let me stress again, and Coach Mosley hit this point earlier today, and I'm, I guess, caught up on it, but whatever wins for you, whatever wins for you, do it. If it's 1 page, if it's no pages, if it's 25 pages, whatever it is that you find to win. We won 4 straight regular season titles in the ACC. This year, we finished 2nd. Had Notre Dame not been in, we would have won again. We won 2 out of 3 conference tournament titles. And 3 out of 4, I guess. But the point is, whatever we do, I'm not saying it's the best in the world at all. I'm not promoting that. I'm just saying it's been successful for us. So what's successful for you, do it. But make sure that the bottom line is getting those wins, because that's what the game's all about. Self-scout. We do this. I give Coach a rundown of our team periodically. I will list 4 or 5 things. I'll say, look, if they press us, we cannot handle a press. So we have to work more on our press offense. If they zone us, we cannot play against a good zone defense. We have got to work more on our zone offense. This is during the season. This has nothing to do with the opponent we're playing, but these are Achilles heels in our pro. These are things we cannot handle very well. By the same token, it's not always negative. Coach, our man defense is really good. I mean, we're holding people to, when we play man, these type of numbers. So, but it's a self-scout. And I do the same thing. I do the same thing in a different way with our players, but I don't give them that information. But we share that information among ourselves so we know what we need to work on with our players. The mentioned 3 to 5 tapes. I'm always big on comparable opponents. We play Maryland. I want to see what they did against Connecticut, either one. I want to see that game, even though we don't play Maryland right away. I want to see comparable opponents. I don't care if the last game, if for example, we're getting ready to play Maryland, and the last game they played was against somebody that they beat by 30, I don't really care to watch that. That bores me and it's not going to help me. But the game before that, which happened to be the Notre Dame game, which was a heck of a game, and they had them on the ropes and could have beaten them, I want to see that game. Now, if the previous 3 to 5 games are significant in terms of score and everything else, I'll watch that. If we're playing on the road, playing at Maryland, I want to see a game at Maryland. I don't want to see, I'll watch them on the road as well, but I want to see how they play at home, because teams typically play different at home than they do on the road. By the same situation, I will watch a game as quickly as I can, but I'm in no hurry to watch a game, and I watch the whole game at one time. I take a yellow pad, legal pad, and I go right down and I watch the game once, and I've got offense, defense, personnel, all of it done. And then I compare game to game and put the report together from there. Statistics. I'm big on stats. We talked earlier in our last session about statistics. The first thing I do, and Tasha mentioned this too, that they do the same. I want the game stats for the season. I want every box score. I want the game stats. I want the game stats from the tapes that I have in the last 5 games particularly. And then I want the overall stats. And I analyze those, and I go down and divide the stat. For example, the first stat is field goals. This lady has 15 out of 50 field goals. So in 10 games, she's shooting 5 a game. She shoots 5. The next one shoots 8. The next one shoots 10. And I know who's shooting the most shots, the most threes. I know who's shooting the most free throws. I know who's committing the most fouls, who's getting the most steals. And I analyze all that. Then I analyze them against their opponent. They're making 5 threes per game. Their opponents are making 4, and I break all those things down. That's before I watch the tape. And then I watch the tape to see how it correlates to what I've seen statistically. But I will tell you this, if you really work at this statistical analysis, sometimes it's scary. You can, in conference games, once everybody's played 5 and it's pretty comparable, you can almost predict the outcome of a game within a reasonable amount, like 65, 62, and it might end up 68, 61, something of that nature. But you can call the number. I did that for the Coach P early on. I was giving her a number. I said, we got to have 68. We have to win 68 or 70 to win tonight. How you know that? I know. I'm just telling you. We need to get 68, 70 points somewhere in there to win. Okay. Well, she put up with that for 2 or 3 games, and she, I don't want to hear that anymore. And we approach it the same way. We do not approach any opponent any differently. I don't care if that opponent is 0-15. The report is the same as the opponent at 15-0. We do not distinguish with our players. And the information, because it's one voice, is presented the same way all the time. And I'm not saying my voice or this one voice is the gospel, but it's consistent. You've got to be careful when you share reports that those players say, well, Coach Jones, he or she really does a good job with that report. And Coach Johnson, out of those reports that Coach Johnson gives, I'm kind of confused on them. Again, you talk about brain lock or confusion, you get it in that situation. Or Coach Jones has all the big teams, and Coach Johnson has all the other teams. Well, this is really an important game because Coach Jones has got this game. I'm going to kill him because Coach Johnson got it, and I'm not just going to be a runaway. So the consistency is something that you want. I'm not saying you can't have consistency with 2 people doing it. I'm not saying, but I am saying you better be careful that it is presented in a consistent fashion, and because that can be confusing. We are big on personnel analysis and one-on-one play because we believe defensively that we're going to take you out of what you do, and we're going to force you to play in a broken play game. And we spend a lot of time on one-on-one defense, whether we're playing our matchup or our man, and a lot of emphasis on one-on-one stops because we don't care what you call 2, 3, head tap, whatever. We're not going to let you get to that. Head tap's a flare screen. We're going to knock that flare screen off so you can't get to it. So we're not so much into calls. And the other thing you find about calls, you'll spend all your time trying to run that thing back to see, well, did she pull her shirt or did she hit her head or what was that? And you run it back. That's time consuming. If you know something, if you've got it easily, well then fine. They're running red and that's their call there and so on. But otherwise, we don't mess with it because we're going to try to take you out of your offensive sets that we've already studied and that you have studied and that we have worked on defending. So we don't spend much time on that. A week's look. If we play Wednesday and Sunday, after the Sunday game, I give Coach, it's very similar to what Tasha does, I give her a rundown of the week for the next 2 games. So if we've got North Carolina State the next week, and we played Maryland on Sunday, when she leaves that night, she's got a detailed outline of what needs to be done to prepare for North Carolina State. I give her the scouting report as quickly as I get it done, but sometimes North Carolina State has played that day and I want updated information, so the scouting report isn't necessarily finished on Sunday because I want to study the game that they just played on Sunday. And then the next opponent is the same way. And that's how we prepare for the week. So she has everything that needs to be done for the week as she prepares the team from the last game our game, and then what we've got coming up. Scouting report, especially, again, I'm wearing poor Maryland out here, but we play Maryland again. I go and I analyze what I had down and what we had written and what wasn't good and what they did differently and what we couldn't handle and some of the things maybe we did okay. And so I put that away so that when I come back to them again, and every scouting report is new. Everyone is new. And I'm going to jump ahead to tournament here. People say, well, how do you do in the tournament? I never assume that a team is the same as when we played them last time, and I'll give you a good example. We play North Carolina typically on Sunday before the ACC tournament. That means that we're probably going to face them in the ACC tournament someplace. If we happen to face them in the championship game, or even the semifinal game, they've already played a game, or maybe two, depending on how they got there. They're a different team than they were Sunday, even though we're playing them Saturday or Sunday just a week later. We never assume that that's the same team. Maybe the reason they won those two games is they changed their defense a little bit. Maybe they're playing more 2-3 zone than they played against us on Sunday. Maybe they're running a special play that they didn't run against us on Sunday. If we just go in and say, well, you guys have played them before, well, we just played them Sunday, it's the same old thing, let's just go play. You set yourself up for losses against good coaches, because good coaches make adjustments, and they make them sometimes game to game. And this year was a good example. Carolina beat us twice during the regular season, and in the tournament, we beat them just because of that. I'll tell you that right now. So you never want to assume that just because, well, we played them Sunday, we know everything about it. Well, maybe you will, and maybe you do, but we don't believe that in our situation. There are games, we go to those little huddles, those coaches' huddles, which I think they're kind of comical. But little coaches' huddles before you meet with the team. And there are games that I don't say anything. And I know Coach probably is looking at that saying, well, how come Coach Brown, he didn't say anything in that huddle? Look, when I got nothing to say, I don't say anything. Hey, Coach, you got it, baby. We're going to win this one by 25. We're up 25. What do you want me to say? I mean, you already got this one in the bag. You can handle this, all right? Now, if it's a close game, maybe you're struggling a little bit, head coach. I'll chime in here. I got some information. But what I will tell you is this. Same thing Tasha said. Make sure it's based on research and data, and there's a good chance that your suggestion is going to work. Don't just yell out, I think we ought to play a 2-3 zone now. I like a 2-3 zone. I mean, I don't know. Let's try it. No. Not unless you know it's going to work. So, but you say, well, let's play a 2-3 zone, and the reason we're going to play it is because the last 3 games they lost against a 2-3 zone. Well, it makes sense to try it then. So, especially if you have it in your arsenal. But bring researched information to that huddle. And if you don't have anything worthwhile to say, just don't say anything. I mean, after all, those head coaches are getting paid a hell of a lot of money. Let them earn it. Measurable goals. This is an interesting one that Tasha made me think of, because she brought up this idea, if you're not, you're struggling. And we've all done that. You're struggling. There's teams out there that are a little better than you are, maybe a lot better, and you got a long season. You don't want your kids to be disappointed, depressed, and everything. You've got to pump them up. So measurable goals are good. Let me give an example of a measurable goal situation that's on the different side. I was blessed in '98 to be associated with a team that went 39-0 and won by an average of 30 points per game. I mean, it was a phenomenal season. It was one of the best teams in the history of women's basketball. I won't say it's the best, but it was one of the best. We had no competition. We got through about 10 games, and we were not making any progress. So we decided that we have to give goals for that game. Now, you're going to think this is really off the chart, and I did too, but we did it, and it worked. We would go into a certain game and say, you got to win by 25 tonight. You got to out-rebound them by 15 or 20. And we'd set those numbers, how many steals, how many turnovers you couldn't have, that type of thing, how many you want to force them into. So we did it on both sides of the ball. And they were held accountable for that after the game. Not that we won. So if we were supposed to win by 25 and won by 20, they had to run. They had a penalty. There was a penalty and rebounding. Same way. Penalties across the board on goals that weren't met. because we knew when March and April got there, we had to be ready to win a national championship. And if we're not going to get tested now, we'd get tested in that NCAA tournament. And it was an unusual circumstance, I know, but it was something about measurable goals that was really important to our success that year. And it's whatever side you're on, there's certainly something to be said by having measurable goals. I want to share something with you. The administrator mentioned to me the other day because we were talking about recommending coaches. And I thought this was a great point because you want to get jobs. I said, what do you look for when you're hiring head coaches? And she said, well, you know, a lot of things, and went through the natural things. She said, but one of the key things, how can they make decisions? Split-second decisions. She said, you know, sports is one of the few businesses where you have to make a decision and make it in 30 seconds and implement it and have 5 people do something, bang, bang, bang. We try to evaluate that head coach that we hire. Can that man or woman make decisions in split seconds? In corporate world, we're going to look at it, we'll go back, we'll meet next week and decide. And there's some decisions in our business that are like that. But there are a lot of decisions that have to be made, whether they're on the court in the games or a discipline decision that has to be made right now. You can't wait 2 days to make that decision. You have to make it immediately. How good is that person at making split-second decisions?
Marlon Shea, University of Maryland. Quick question. When you guys break down players for scouting, we did something different this year, and Brenda was really adamant. She was more so less is more. And we only focused on the players that could hurt us in games. So we would have, I mean, even when we went against the lesser teams, we would maybe have 2 people on the scouting report, and we would give them the starters at the beginning of the game. We only focused on those 2 people that could hurt us night in. I mean, if we go into this game, if they were averaging 20, 25 like the Cooley girl down at FIU, we would focus on those folks that could hurt us, but we would play our regular team defense, Maryland defense, on the rest. Do you guys go in as a specific number of players that you have to show, whether you say it's 7 players, or if that 6th or 7th player isn't there, or maybe averaging 2 or 3 points a game, do you still focus, give them the focus that you want to give? Either one can answer.
Well, I'll say for us, I know Al mentioned this in the last meeting, but if they're playing double digits or scoring significantly, they're going on there. And for our team, if there's a player on there and if not on there and they enter the game, they flip out. They're like looking at the bench like, who's this? What can they do? And so, relax. She wasn't on there for a reason. But, you know, I think when they're, you could say over-prepared, or they have all the information, our team works better that way. They're apt to be able to respond more successfully, and that's just for us. And we're at a place in our program where it's important for us not to miss anything, because there's anybody out there that could explode and harm us in a certain way.
We have 7 in the short scout, and I have everybody that plays double-digit minutes in the long scout. Example, we played Ohio State a few years ago, and a lady came in that was on the short scout, and one of the players said, hey, so-and-so didn't, what'd she do because she wasn't on the short scout? I said, you read the long scout? She said, I said, okay, well, it doesn't matter. This is what she does. So the other point about that is, if you're matching up man-to-man a lot, you really, the key playing man defense is getting the right matchups. And so that entails more people as far as I'm concerned. Again, it goes back to my original point, if you win, whatever. But no, we focus, well, on Alyssa, I mean, we obviously focus on her to control her some way, but also what are the, if we control her, what happens? What else happens? And we've got to be prepared to handle the what if she's not having a good night, because you got other people that can beat us. So.
Coach, you ready from Howard?
Yes, Jonathan Mason, Howard University. Just some coaches have a philosophy of changing defenses out of timeouts, or when you change your defenses, do you base it on your scout or a philosophy?
I got it. We do that a lot, sometimes to a fault. We change defense on makes. We do change defense a lot, and it's based on our head coach's belief that changing defense is effective, and many times it is. But does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I know we only have 2 minutes, so it's cool. That was good.
Can I just say one thing to that too? I think it goes back to your scouting. If you know that a team does certain things out of timeouts, special situations, then that's something to keep in mind too if you need to switch it up. But otherwise, if it's working, don't try to fix it.
Terrence Chapman, Florida University. I know it's different for different coaches, head coaches, but can you explain how much time you spend on your scouting report with the team on the floor? Is it 2 days before the game, 3 days before the game? To elaborate on that.
Now, good question.
On the scouting report, for me, on the films, it's generally about, with the film and putting together a scout, it's about 20 hours of work. I go back through it over and over and over again. I'm pretty anal about that. On the floor, you probably have about 45 minutes of walkthrough time. In film, 15. What do you say?
I'm sorry, for the student athletes, is it 2 days before the game?
Yes. Yes.
We break it down into 2 phases. If there's 2 days to prepare, the first day we go through everything they do defensively, and we prepare offensively. The second day, the day before the game, we concentrate on defense. So we do it. We don't do everything in one day. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
This is the last question.
Go ahead.
Yes, Portia Grant, Coastal Carolina. You just answered my question. I had the same question.
You're right. Unique Banks, University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Do you guys do scout quizzes, like to make sure your kids knew your long scout or short scout?
Well, he talked about the fact that he hides little things and
Right, no, I know that, like.
We do. I don't want them to regurgitate the information. So when we go into the scout room and on the day before, after they've seen the film already once, we ask them to tell us about the team, to tell us about what they want to do as individuals, and then tell us offensively, but don't just repeat exactly what's on the scout. I want to make sure they have an understanding of what we were saying.
On game day, on shoot around, our players have to stand and talk about the opponent, each player. So they go around and they talk about the 7 players that we've already covered.
If they don't know something, how do you hold them accountable?
Well, they don't have,
Okay.
and I don't mean that in any way, they just don't screw that up. And so, okay.
All right, well, thank you again. Break, and then we're gonna go into your round table discussion in the main room. 8 to a table, don't forget. That's why you gotta put it over.
For them will be 2 of the top programs in the country. So without further ado, our session is changing the culture of a program from pretender to contender. And no doubt that both Texas and South Carolina are on rise and have that championship culture coming along. South Carolina more new to some of the success, where Texas has a winning tradition and is getting back to where we've always known them to be. Lisa Boyer is an associate head coach and has been the lead assistant on Dawn Staley's staff since 2002. Not only her recruiting efforts, but also her work with the guards have brought success both at Temple and now at South Carolina. When you read the words of Dawn Staley, she talks about how Lisa mentored her and how she trusts her with her life. I don't even know if I trust my own mama with my life. So that tells you how close their relationship is, and just watching their interaction all the time, it seems like Dawn is always leaning on Lisa for that guidance, and there's a lot of trust in that relationship. Obviously, South Carolina had a tremendous amount of success this year. The SEC regular season champs, they just signed the #1 recruit in the nation, in Asia Wilson. Going back to the Temple days, multiple NCAA tournaments, but even before Temple, Lisa has had long coaching stints in the ABL, the WNBA, a head coach at Bradley. She's also been very heavily involved on the administrative side as an SWA and compliance coordinator. So you've been the co-host for her. And then we have Travis Mays from Texas, who played at Texas, was a very good player there. A lot of his records still stand. He had a stint in the NBA. He is now the associate head coach at his alma mater for Karen Aston, but it's his second stint there, where he also coached under Jody Conrad. He coached for a time at LSU under Van Chancellor, so some of the best in our game. He signed at multiple top 25 recruiting classes, including the #1 class during his career, and he stands in the Texas Men's Athletic Hall of Fame as a player. So, we welcome our crew, and we look forward to learning. Thank you.
We're going to speak and we're going to go back and forth. Lisa and I have talked about how we were planning on doing this, coming from two programs that are, I would say, getting back to where we really want to be on the national stage. Just to give you a little bit of my history, I started at the University of Texas under Coach Jody Conrad. I went to LSU for 4 years. I went to Georgia. And we're going to go back and forth. She got some of the same ideas that I have. I'm anxious to hear what she say and how she sees a lot of this stuff. And I'm anxious to share some of mine with you as well.
Can you hear me? Is this good? Is that better? I think for me, as we do this, I just want to tell you our story. We came from Temple. Let me just backtrack a little bit to just tell you my association with Dawn. I was able to get a job in the ABL back in 1996. Dawn was coming off an Olympic gold medal. The ABL was one of the professional women's teams in the country, and she was assigned to my team because they were trying to do grassroots. So being a UVA player, she was assigned to the Richmond team, which is the team that I was able to coach. And I had never had an opportunity as a coach at Bradley to have any kind of a player like this. She was phenomenal. And any of you that have ever had a chance to see her play, some of you are probably too young to even remember that, but she was a pretty good player. Probably the best at what she did. But, I used to tell her, Dawn, you'd be really good at this. And she would say, I don't want to be one of you. Some of you heard me say that yesterday. But eventually she got in to the game. She had an opportunity to go to Temple. I remember when she called me to tell me about Temple, I was like, don't do that. Don't do that one. Because at the time, Temple, had really not had any success. And she was never had played and never had coached. And, to go into that situation, I didn't think that would probably be the best situation for her. But with Dawn, any of you that know Dawn, you just have to present the challenge, and she's really drawn to challenges. And so they tricked her into it. She took the job. I wasn't able to go with her at the time. I was in the WNBA, but eventually, I did end up with her at Temple. And, we had some success at Temple, but what we were selling at Temple was the name Dawn Staley. And, being at that point, she was now a 3-time Olympian. She had a WNBA All-Star. She had done all of those things. And she was playing. She was still playing. So we didn't really have her in July. We just had to basically sell the name. We got into a lot of homes because they wanted to, guess what? Meet Dawn Staley, okay? But when it came right down to it, we weren't getting those recruits. So at some point, we have to match the conference with the name. And I don't mean to make that sound egotistical or anything, but we were eventually going to need to get into a bigger conference. We had the opportunity to go to South Carolina, and I guess that's really where the story begins for us. It really, when we got there, to be honest with you, we did not know those players. When we first got there, that was our first order of business, to try to get to know these players, to try to get to know the freshmen. I know Dawn and I went to all the freshmen. And right away, right off the bat, we lost 2 kids. And they weren't freshmen, they were returning players. And I don't really need to get into why, but they left us. And, Dawn, I mean, again, if you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here. She didn't even, wink an eye, drop it. I mean, we just kept on going. But, the kids in South Carolina, or the team at South Carolina, were not like the kids at Temple. And now we're talking about personalities of coaches and the way that Dawn coaches and the way that, her expectations for players. So getting there and dealing with that was a shock to us. It was a shock to the coaching staff. We just kept waiting for them to come along. And it didn't happen right away. That first recruiting class was essential to us. I mean, and I think whenever you take a new job, I think Travis will agree with me, that first recruiting class is key because that's really going to be the foundation for what you're going to be building. We happened to have a halfway decent recruiting class. We were able to sign a pretty big recruit, and it was a game changer for us. No question about it. I'm not going to name names, but we still were not where we needed to be with the team, meaning that there was still some, pushback from the way we were coaching and what Dawn wanted from them, and what they were used to and what they were willing to give. It wasn't so bad with the freshmen, but you're still having to deal with these upperclassmen and these kids that are there, and you want them to have ownership in us, and we want to have ownership in them. So there were some problems, problems within the team, from there, Dawn and I had to have a conversation because at that point, we were not reaching them. There was a point where we were not reaching them, and I told Dawn, I said, you're going to have to change. I'm not. Of course, she's like, I'm not changing my principles. I know the way the game's supposed to be played. And I agree with her. You're absolutely right. But we got to trick them. And it really becomes smoke and mirrors. And you have to get them to do, this is a different generation of kids, without them thinking they're doing it, basically. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So Dawn, Dawn did a 180. She's maybe stopped. It wasn't what she was saying to them, it was maybe how she was saying to them. They were missing the message. And she drew back. We did have some setbacks. We lost that recruit. She transferred to another school. But again, we kept plugging away. And it was constantly trying to get these kids that were there to take ownership and to take leadership, because what we were trying to get to was letting them run the team. And when you can get to that point on your team where you're not having to monitor everything that happens, where your kids are vested, where your kids understand what you're trying to accomplish, that's kind of where we're trying to get to. And I'm gonna stop at that point. I'm gonna let Travis talk now.
What Lisa's saying is exactly. I'm gonna try and give you a little bit more structure in the details of what she's saying, and because we talked about it and we do it the same way. And what she's basically saying, what Dawn did, she finally got an opportunity to give her team what we call vision, based on what Dawn's philosophy is. So if you coach long enough, which I hope you guys are in this for the long haul, you will find yourself going to a program different than the one that's on your shirts right now. And when you do that, it's going to be because that program is probably not doing as well as administration needs them or wants them to do. So when you go in, you will be doing what we're up here talking about, and that's changing the culture or changing the program. You may not be building it, you may be restoring it, or you may be building it. But you have to give those players visions of where they're not at. Meaning, we went this year coming back to Texas with Coach Karen Aston. There's 3 things that we really wanted to do. One was succeed academically. 2 was get our team back to the NCAA tournament. And the 3rd thing was have a culture that will be attractive to bring top-rated kids or the best kids in the state of Texas back to our program. So That's the number one thing. I mean, our vision and the details of our vision was uncompromising. I mean, we didn't compromise not one bit because we went in there. There was a lot of resistance. Okay, players were used to doing things the way that they did them, and there were some that, as you heard, didn't want to buy in. So we had to let some of them go. We had to cut our ties. But in order for the kids that were there and wanted to be a part of a winning program, they had to buy into the vision of what we was talking about we needed to do. And what we wanted to do is to finish in the top half of the conference, because that's not where they were. And we stayed consistent, and we were able to achieve those goals finishing up this year. So I think that's getting us back started to where we actually want to go now. Where do we want to go? And when you say where do you want to go, you have to now assess where your team is currently. And when you figure out where they are currently, now you start getting into recruiting. Do you have the talent to be successful to win your conference? So recruiting at this point becomes essential. If it's you need a point guard, if it's you need a different assistant coach, if you need a strength and conditioning coach, now you're talking about where do you want to go. You got to get your team now prepared to go in the direction where you actually want them to go. It's hard to, it's not really hard to explain, but what I will say to you is, Karen Aston is the type of player where when we're doing recruiting, we had to buy into her philosophy. You guys probably heard this morning. When you start talking about recruiting, and you're talking about changing the culture, the way you're going to change it, your culture is going to be determined on the philosophy of your head coach, which eventually becomes your identity of your program. And the identity of your program is what's going to attract other people in your program, because not only do AAU coaches, high school coaches, players, and parents, they all want to be associated with winners, okay? So when you start talking about a culture, you have to define what a winning culture looks like, okay? If you haven't been around, I've been around one, okay? If I wanted to back up a little bit, I started with Coach Jody Conrad, who's a legend in this game, okay? I watched her lead a program like the University of Texas with absolute class. So I learned how to cross T's, dot I's. And to give you a little bit of history and tell you a little bit of the story, after she resigned, I went to LSU. Okay, we're just going to talk about culture. I got hired with Van Chancellor, and at least I'm going to talk. Just tell a quick story. I left Texas. It may be funny. I went to LSU, and there was an entire new staff going to LSU except for Bob Starkey, who had been there with the former staff. Okay, I got an opportunity to become my first time recruiting coordinator position. But let me tell you what I ran into, and we'll get into this a little bit later. We ran into a situation where that program was being changed because of a situation that ended up being somewhat a scandal. Okay, so when you go in there, when we're talking about changing the culture of LSU, it wasn't really about the culture that needed to be changed, because we had some unbelievable players at LSU. It was a matter of the players now building a culture now of trust. Again, am I making sense? It was a culture of trust. They needed to trust the staff who they didn't know but only one guy. But this is the flip. The reason that I started is because I'm talking about recruiting. I'm getting my first recruiting opportunity as a coordinator. And I got to go, every kid that wanted to come to LSU was cutting off the ties. They didn't want to be involved in what looked upon as a scandal or a situation of a bad program. And that wasn't the case. You just have some good people making bad decisions. That happens all the time. And they didn't want any part of it. But what we had to do is, what I had to do is sell a vision. How do you sell a vision in a short amount of time? Because Ashley's in the audience. They had 9 seniors on the team. Am I right, Ashley? There was 9 seniors on LSU's team. So therefore, once they graduate, we don't even have enough players to even fill a roster. We can't even. So we got people turning down. So now you're talking about, if I didn't understand or saw what a winning program looked like from the University of Texas, we had signed the #1 recruiting class in the country. And I'm gonna just tell you a quick story. This is how I got the job. This is how I got hired by Van Chancellor. When he sat down and showed me basically what was needed as an assistant coach, he told me when he sat down, he had flown me and my wife in for the interview, and he said, I can't hire you because I can't have another man on my staff. So I didn't get, you laugh. I said, well, why did you fly me in? He said, I got Barb Starkey, I got Joe Carvalito, I got myself. We're in women's basketball. I'm sorry, I just can't hire another male. I said, well, I'm gonna tell you what you're faced with because of what you shared with me. I say, you need to replace 9 seniors on LSU's program. And you got somewhat of people turning away from your program. LSU is at a high level. They've been to 4 Final Fours. And you need to get back to the Final Four, but your recruiting class after this class graduates is gonna be the determining factor of where this program goes. And I say, well, I know what that model looks like. And I said, if you hire somebody and they don't know what that model looks like, they ain't gonna know how to do it. I said, I replaced 6 seniors who was All-Americans, and we replaced them at the University of Texas with 4 McDonald's All-Americans and had the #1 recruiting class in the country. So we needed to recruit 6 players, okay? So therefore we had to recruit 6 times 6 times 6. So that's 3 sets of 6, and each one of those 6 needed to feel like they was our A players. Because if not, the program is going to drop. So now you got to take that and take that 18 times with 9. You got to recruit those type of caliber players. And if you don't have somebody who's seen that done or have put that type of work in, it don't matter whether you hire a woman or a man, you'll be looking for a job in about 2-3 years. You looked at my wife and said, your husband's pretty cocky. She said, no, he's just telling you what he know, and he's confident in what he says, and he'll do what he say do. I said, well, Coach, I have seen that. I know how you're going to have to go about it, and that's how I got the job at LSU, by convincing Van Chancellor, based on my experience, of the culture of recruiting high-level players to come to LSU in order for it to stay at the level that it was.
Let's just segue right into the staff for a second. Again, it's really about the head coach. Dawn likes to hire people that she knows. I think I think Boo Williams said it today, didn't he, when he was talking about coaching and who you're hiring to hire people that you know. Dawn is all about that, Philly girl, so she's very close to the best. But I think what Travis is saying is really what it's all about. You need to make yourself, you need to bring something to the table. You have to, when you go into situations like this, and I don't really care if it's BCS or mid-major, or, it doesn't matter what division you are, you have to be able to bring something to the table. And you have to be self-motivated. Nobody has time to run around and make sure you're doing your job. Nobody. And I can honestly say, I don't think Dawn worries about what the 3 of us are doing. I'm not really worried about Nikki and Darius, what they're doing. I know that they're doing it. I'm not saying that we are mistake-free. We make mistakes, but for the most part, it is a tireless job. I think people were talking today in the other session, when do you make phone calls, when do you do your scouting reports, what's your night time like? When you're in season, you're in season. You have to be able to get your scouting reports done. You have to be able to recruit. You have to manage your team. You have to be there for them. You have staff meetings. You have things that you have to do across campus. You have all these different things. And if you have time to take your dry cleaning in or to go to a grocery store, that's probably a good thing. But I don't know any other way to do it. It is a lot of work when you're in season. And people are, they've been very, very kind to our team, congratulating us and what a great season. It must have been so much fun. But honestly, guys, we would win a game and it felt good for about 4 to 6 hours, and then it was on. We were on to the next one. Then you're worried about the next team. That team can beat us. And you keep trying to win the next game and win the next game. And I rely, I think the three of us, I think Darius, Nikki, and I, Darius Taylor and Nikki McCray, I think the three of us really rely on each other. And, you know, we have to be there for each other. We're on a staff where everybody recruits. The scouting reports are divided equally. You know, we do, I mean, Nikki and I do work with the guards, Darius with the post players, but anytime any one of those kids comes in, it doesn't matter if she's a guard or post, and they want to work out, we're going down there with them. It doesn't matter. So, you know, with that in mind, you know, the staffing is important, and let's just jump into your strength and conditioning coach. Vital. You know, we need healthy kids. I know that when we first got to South Carolina, we had some injuries. We had 2 ACL injuries back to back. They were our only 2 seniors. We had back-to-back ACL injuries. We got into, well, we didn't get anywhere the first season. The second season, we got into the WNIT, and our kids were tired. And, you know, Don went to the strength and conditioning coach and said, it can't happen. This can't happen again. So he had to pick it up. You know, we have a trainer. A trainer. He's like MacGyver. You have to have him. I mean, we happen to have a very good trainer. And if it weren't for Paul, keeping these kids healthy, keeping them ready to go, it's a long, hard season, especially in conference. It is brutal in the SEC. I mean, I can't explain it any other way. I mean, there's a dogfight every game, and these kids have to stay healthy. You know, just the things across campus, your academic advisor. You know, they travel with us. You know, I know that not everybody has that, but they do have to go to school, you know, and they have to stay eligible, and you have to have somebody that's watching that and monitoring that. We have somebody on staff, Coach Taylor is over academics, so he has a hand on that. They meet weekly. But all those people that, you know, are kind of really on the outside, or not really on the outside of South Carolina, they have to be involved with us. Our DOBA, guys, Director of Operations, they do so much for us. I mean, they make it, they smooth it out. They get us where we need to be. You know, they make sure that our meals are on time. They do all these different things. And I don't know, I think sometimes we tend to take those things for granted. But they're moving 27 to 32 people, you know, twice a week. And that's a lot of work. So, you know, it's really important that from our standpoint that everybody's doing a job, because we really do not have time to run around and make sure that everybody's doing what they need to do. So, you know, as an assistant coach, I think it's my job to try to buffer Dawn as much as possible. I think it's my job to, you know, to manage the kids as well as possible. But she's involved in all of these things. But the big thing is you need to troubleshoot. You need to be able to look down and figure out what could go wrong here and fix it. Try to fix it. Try to manage it. You know, you need to be. I'm sure Travis will talk about this. You need to be able to read kids. You know, just because they don't say it doesn't mean they're not feeling a certain way. And you need to try to be able to, you know, change the, you know, at least try to fix how they're feeling. And sometimes you can't fix it. You just can't fix it. I mean, you know, kids are kids. But, you know, we're in a competitive business. And, you know, the staff and what we do, what we all do here is critical to the success of the program. And no matter how menial your task is, you can't be too big to do something. I mean, I'm stuffing envelopes sometimes. I don't really have time to stuff envelopes, but I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm not above that. And you know, as long as you are willing to do these things and you're always putting the program first, because at the end of the day, that's what we're asking your players to do, is to put it forward. And I think, you know, we always have this big discussion about balancing personal life and coaching. Coaching is not a job, it is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. I mean, you guys, even when you go on vacation, are you not texting kids 24/7? Or don't you have to answer a text if they text you? I mean, it's just the way that the game is moving. It's very rewarding, but again, you know, we have to be ready to take on those responsibilities, because it is definitely a team job, without question.
Just to talk about the staff, and she connected all those people that she talked about. When you're talking about changing the culture, you got to involve all of those people, and it ends up becoming somewhat like somewhat of a puzzle. mean, you're talking about strength and conditioning coach, you're talking about your DOBO, you're talking about administration. Everybody has to buy into this vision that your head coach has. So staff, that's just not basketball. That's everybody that's involved. That's media relations, that's everybody that you got is gonna have to play a huge part in getting to that particular point in time that you want to get to, because you have to set goals, you have to give yourself a certain time to reach a certain place, and then to move on. Not only staff, Lisa, this is something that I think was really, really important. I'm gonna go back to when I went to LSU. When I went to LSU, I think whenever y'all go to a new program, and I'm saying this, you're gonna have to change the culture. You have to dig into the history. You got to learn the history. You got to learn the legacy. You need to know everything about that program, and you need to know how to sell it. When she said you have to be selfless as an assistant coach, time can't be anything that's a problem for you. You're gonna work tireless hours. And I'm gonna tell you what I ended up doing when I got there. Just the situation was one where I had to, the parents didn't know me. They didn't know Van Chancellor. Only person they knew was Bob Starkey. Bob Starkey was not one of the coaches that was recruiting these kids. So there was no relationship ties there. So when you start talking about putting yourself aside, putting the program first, you have to build relationships. You either have to build them or you had to repair them. In that case, I had to do two things. I had to also build a relationship with the parents, with the players, because I wasn't recruiting some of these players. It may be April Sykes was the only player that I was recruiting at Texas when I came to LSU. Other than that, I had to get to know the parents, and the hours were tremendous. And once you do that, I think I got on the phone and talked to the alumni, and they ended up telling me about the former coach before Pokey got there, who was Sue Gunner. So I found out the entire history. So that way I connected with the alumni. Now I was able to sell something to the parents and the players that they could relate to. Selling me didn't do any good. They didn't know me. Okay, so I'm just telling you, when you go to a new program, if you want to build some trust, because when you're trying to change the culture, you don't have a whole lot of time. How do you maximize your time? You got to somehow get some loyalty and get some trust and get some people out there that's speaking on your behalf. And that's the first thing that I did. I talked to the parents and I talked to the alumni, and that got me in the door to where I built trust with them, and that helped me in the recruiting, on the recruiting trail.
Well, let's talk about recruiting. The lifeline. I mean, it is the lifeline. It is, there's no way around it. I don't care where you're at. You've got to have players. Players play, coaches coach, and you've got to have the players to coach. And for us, coming to South Carolina, we really, at the time we came, there really were not, most of the players that were the best players in South Carolina were younger. And I even remember Mike Flynn having a conversation with him, how important it was to start these relationships as early as possible. And, at that time, Asia Wilson was in the 6th grade. And nobody knew about Asia Wilson. We didn't even know about Asia Wilson. We had an elite camp. You say elite, they all think they're elite. So we get 150 kids, like 7 of them are elite. And you all been there. So we're actually in 2 different facilities. We broke it up by age. We had an older group and a younger group. And of course, she's in 6th grade, so she's with the younger group. She's in a whole different facility. Nikki McCrae was down there with that group, and I was up with the older group, and Dawn was trying to go back and forth. But that's really the first time we saw Asia Wilson. And, she wasn't very good when she was in 6th grade. I mean, she was like a deer, baby deer. She was still, at that point, she was like 6'2" or 6'3", or something like that. But that really was the start of it. And, she played for the Palmetto 76ers. Nobody really knew about the Palmetto 76ers at the time, but we used to go to the games because she was tall, and now she's in 7th grade. And so we used to follow this team around. And guys, plenty of times where Dawn was in the gym where nobody else was there, where we're pulling Dawn off of other games, and not because she was that good yet. Okay, I mean, she really didn't start getting good until maybe her freshman year. She started really developing, and so you know, up until then, you know, we still had some other players in the state that I thought we needed to sign. We were able to get, you know, Alicia Welch, she's a rising senior for us. She was a big key for us, which helped us with, you know, we had Asia Dozier, who's now with us. We lost to Zelina McDaniel, you know, here's the bottom line. Now, South Carolina was losing all of its players to North Carolina. Sylvia Hatchell was a South Carolina native, so she knew all the coaches in South Carolina. And we had to come in here, we had to change the culture. You know, we had to like introduce ourselves to them. We had to have a lot of coaching clinics, you know, free coaching clinics to try to get to know these coaches. You know, AAU coaches. Just trying to introduce ourselves to them, and at the same time try to do other things. You know, as we move forward with, you know, a kid like Asia, you know, obviously she was getting a lot better, but still wasn't quite on the scene yet. And then her sophomore year, you know, she blew up, and you know, and then we were in the dogfight. And you know, everybody in the country wanted Asia. It came down to North Carolina, UConn, and Tennessee. Those were the last 4 schools. And you know, I can go on and on about this recruitment of this kid, but she didn't even want to give us a home visit. I mean, an official visit. Are you kidding me? But I get it, because she's on our campus all the time. But she didn't like, well, you know, we don't want to come and do an official visit. And Dawn's like having a fit, like, you're coming for an official visit, you know. But, you know, everybody thinks, and everybody kept telling her she was coming to South Carolina, which only made her madder. We weren't telling her that, but everybody else was telling her that. And I swear to God, I can show you the video. We did not know that she was coming to South Carolina until 20 minutes before she made the announcement. And I've got it on video of us getting that phone call. And yes, it's a big deal. And I said this morning in that early bird thing. I mean, it's a huge responsibility. You know, we also have we have some good players coming in with Asia. But, you know, for the state of South Carolina, we're not a California, we're not a Texas, even Florida. I mean, we don't have multiple kids that are, you know, that are that good, you know, that can play for South Carolina. So it's really important that we are on top of the state as much as possible. Because I think, you know, there's only 2 Division I schools in the state of South Carolina. That's not true, because there's more than 2. There's not very many as there would be in like California, but there's us, Clemson, Furman. I think Wofford is Division I. But, you know, it's really important that we try to sign those kids. So, you know, again, it's about relationships. I mean, we are targeting kids in South Carolina, which I encourage all of you to do, as young as possible. I mean, you want to get those 6th graders on your list. You want to get those 2020s, those 2019s. You want them on your list. You want them in your camp. You want them on your campus. You know, you're inviting them to games and football games and all those kinds of things, because it is. I mean, you're going to hear it until the cows come home. It is a relationship. You know, I really feel as though one of the reasons we got Asia, because I don't know if she could have told us no. She knew us better than anybody else. But still, there's pressure on Asia, you know, to even stay in the city. I mean, she's 16 minutes from our campus. So, you know, it's a two-way thing, but this relationship thing is real, and you've got to be able to put in the time, you know, and be willing to do it.
I would like to piggyback on that and say that's exactly true. Recruiting early is one of the most important things that you can do, and I think Texas is giving a great example of that now. We got a pretty deep thing running right now. We're proud of it, but I can go back and what started it when I was once again at LSU. I was recruiting a young lady out of Houston, Texas. She's a 7th grader. We brought her to camp. You just never know where you're going to end up. But the relationship that Lisa is talking about is vital. Young lady, Brooke McCarty, came down to camp at LSU, and at that time, our advanced camp, we stopped the numbers at between 18 and 20 because we wanted to conduct it as if it was a Lady Tiger practice. So we were able to put a lot of individual time into these kids and show them our teaching styles, etc. And it was a lot of hands-on, one-on-one, and she fell in love with it. Okay, I'm 2 schools later. I then went to the University of Georgia, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. I go back to the University of Texas. So to make a long story short, we get back to Texas, and just based on the relationship that I had with the young lady and her mom, we were able to get Brooke McCarty to commit and sign with the University of Texas. back when we needed a point guard, we needed the program culture to change. She's one of the best point guards in the state of Texas. And that's because, as Lisa mentioned, recruiting her so early, it gave me an opportunity with the relationship. It wasn't necessarily the school. She fell in love with LSU because before we got recruited, we had to absolutely fight off Nikki Caldwell. And the key to that was to make sure I made it hard for her to say no. And when you build a relationship, and a kid have to tell you no, that's difficult. I found out that's extremely difficult. If you hadn't put time and she fell in love with school, she would have been over there with Nikki Caldwell right now. And I'm just glad she's at the University of Texas based on the relationship. So starting early is absolute key. But what we're doing in Texas, in order to change the culture, we had to get the state of Texas excited again with Texas basketball. And as she mentioned, we got there, our second year when we got our feet on the ground, we absolutely made sure that it was a #1 priority to get every one of the underclassmen and young talented kids at our advanced camp. And we did just that. We got them on campus. We got their coaches on campus so they can understand the coaching style, and we can start building, once again, relationships with the state, with the coaches. Don't take that for granted, coaches. We're talking about going to a new program, changing the culture, okay? The nugget's gonna be, what is your relationships with that state? What is your relationship with the high school coaches? What is your relationship with the players? What is your relationship with the AAU coaches? I know y'all think that's just recruiting, but my point is, when you get a new job, and if it's not in the exact same state that you were in, you better get on the phone and have a strategic plan of action, or make sure that you talk to all of those particular coaches in that state. Because recruiting is going to be the #1 thing that's going to change the dynamic of your culture. But at the same time, once you get that done, then you have to focus on your program and what style of play that's going to end up making them more successful.
Anybody have any questions?
Marlon Shin, University of Maryland. Just wanted to, this is to you, Lisa, just explain to me how you guys did it at a mid-major program at Temple, and what were some of the things you did, and then switched it over to South Carolina, just from a mid-major to a BCS level.
Are you talking about recruiting, the recruiting part?
Whatever it takes, for you guys to turn around at Temple and get those high-level players that you guys did at Temple.
You know, again, I think that you have to recruit the way your coach, your head coach, or the way she coaches. Dawn is very attracted to speed. We are really big on defense. I think some of the players that we got at Temple, were not necessarily heavily recruited. I mean, Candace Dupree, I don't know if you guys know who Candace Dupree is. She's in the WNBA, she was a #1 draft pick. She was a pretty good player, post player. It was between us and, I forget, another school up in the north. Nobody knew about her. And I think sometimes you have to get, I hate to use the term, but sometimes you have to get lucky. But what we were looking for was athletes at Temple, absolutely athletes. And you can hear, and you hear us say it over and over, we're going to try to outwork you. We're absolutely going to try to outwork you. When we got to South Carolina, and even at Temple, when we got to the NCAA tournament, we weren't getting outworked, we were getting outskilled. I mean, there was a point where we just didn't have the skill set that some of these other schools had. So we went to South Carolina, we had to start at ground zero again. And, again, it was pretty much about our defense. I think we spent a lot of time with our defense, and we were up in people and really trying to disrupt people. But you get to a certain point, and it becomes a skill set. You have to be able to score. If you're going to win a championship, you've got to be able to score the ball. And I don't think our kids were as skilled offensively as they needed to be. So that's been our switch within South Carolina. We're really trying to get some more skilled players, and maybe sometimes give up the athleticism part a little bit. We try not to, but sometimes we just don't. It just doesn't work out that way. This particular class is coming in, we think is very skilled. a question of getting them to the point where they're going to work hard and they are going to bring that skill set. And hopefully we're getting closer to that, because it's just too hard in this game. I mean, and just talking to Mike, I mean, UConn is still there, guys. I mean, it's still there, and we all strive to get there, and it's about a skill set. They have a very skilled team, and I think all of us are trying to get there. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Any other questions? Okay, let's talk a little bit of, yes, go ahead, Mike.
Half the people in the room aren't at these level programs. We know it. But if you're trying to get to one of these spots, you got to go win where you are. So you have to make sure you take away pieces of what they're saying. The most intriguing piece was when you're at LSU, when you're at Temple, not when you're in South Carolina or Texas. Those names sell. But they got people and they got history. We talked about that earlier here at the table. But how do you guys get to where you can help your coach win? Because here's the other thing. You may be good where you are, and you may be one of those game changers who helps lift the program, or when somebody gets, say one of these guys get their own head job, they're going to look in the room and say, okay, who's here that's a game changer? Who's going to do what we do, or do the things that they did? So it's not just enough to hear the story of where they are, it's to hear the story of where they came from. And I think it's important a lot of the assistants here understand when they deal with recruiting, it's not the stars, it's getting that player before you get the star.
I agree. I mean, and just to touch on that, it kind of go into what we were going to talk about. The details of what you do equals the disciplines of what you do, which it builds trust in not only your coaching staff, it builds trust in the community. If they see who you are, you do what you say you're going to do, you will eventually attract the eye, because if you're disciplined and you hold yourself to high standards, your players will then allow you to hold them to high standards. That goes from recruiting, but when you start to implement that into your program, the details of what it is that you're doing, you cannot take for granted. You cannot compromise it, because that's the vision, that's the identity that you want your program to become. And so whatever it is that you teach, if you lead by the example, that's who I am. I think that's the number one thing that has allowed me to continue to get good jobs, because the discipline of, we all work, trust me. We all don't get as much sleep as we want to get, trust me, I understand that. But what are you doing with your time? How effective is the time that you're using? What are your disciplines? If the kids are looking at you and they're holding you to a high standard and respecting what you're saying, that way you're going to get your program to move forward. They're going to build trust. Who you think going to sell you as an assistant coach? When you get a coach that gets a new job, or if I ever get my first job, the assistant coach that I want to work with me is one that I know that I can depend on. That word travels fast. You come to every event like this here, you're being watched. Someone is always watching you. You may not know them, but they know you. I understood that from a very young age. That's why when I got into coaching, a lot of people think because I started at the University of Texas, it was easy for me. I'm just talking about the details. It was not easy for me, because being a professional athlete, there's a perception of who you are. You may be looked at as a prima donna, okay? But it was extremely difficult, because it was the ones that transitioned to the women's game, and now I had to build a name for myself in the women's game. I had to be respected by this culture. So you had to take off. You had to do your due diligence. You had to learn. I had to learn the women's game. Just because I went to the University of Texas, I didn't necessarily know all the women players or the alumni. So it wasn't easy. So it's a matter of how much and how willing you are to work, and how important the details of what your head coach, what the legacy of the program is, and where do you take that, and how do you move forward with that. I think that's extremely important.
Let me just give you something specific. You know, we're getting ready to go out in July, and some of these games start at 8 a.m. and the starting time is 9:45 p.m. Honestly, guys, you need to be there for all of them. And, you know, I mean, not all of us do that. Some of us come in, we don't have a game till 10:45. We don't have, you know, our team's done at 4:45. You know, unless you've got a plane to catch, you probably need to be in the gym, because people are watching you. They're absolutely watching you. Head coaches are watching you. I mean, I get asked all the time about certain coaches, and I'm like, you know, I think that person works. I see him or her all the time. And I just can't stress that enough. Yeah, there's a lot of bad games at 8 a.m., but you know, you should still be in the gym. That's just a practical thing. I mean, that's something that you have total control over, and you know, you might have to give up your sleep or whatever it is. And you know, God knows we don't eat. I mean, you know, you're there at 8 a.m. You know, that's why I'm into the snacks. Okay, I've got it all figured out. I bring food in with me, water. I bring it all in with me. Even if they check my bag, I hide it. But you know, I just think that you have to put yourself out there. You don't know who's watching you, and stay engaged. You know, it's not good to go in the gym, and I'm not saying I don't do it, but I try to pay attention. You know, as much as possible. It's hard to sit there for 14 hours and you know stay engaged. And some gyms are cold and some gyms are hot, but you know, again, it's what people are saying about you, and you know, you try to network as much as possible. Try to sit next to head coaches if you can. You know, you don't want to talk their ear off, but you do want to introduce yourself. I think that's all good stuff. But I mean, that's what we do, guys. You got to recruit. Everybody's got to recruit.
I got a question back there. Go right ahead.
Walton, Auburn University. Now, what I took away from what you guys were saying is, you can say that hard work, job is tough, you gotta be a hard worker, you gotta outwork people, right? That's what I took away from what you're saying. If you guys can comment, for both of you, how do you see and what's your thoughts about a college player jumping to being an assistant coach and not going through the process and learning what hard work really is? Because my understanding of how this coaching thing is set up, the top does the least amount of work, i.e. the head coach. The bottom does all the work. And you work your way up. And as you get higher up in that rank, you do the least amount of work. But if I'm coming from being a basketball player and I jump to being an assistant coach on the road recruiting, and I'm not offending anyone here who has done that, I'm just asking your opinion. How do you see that?
Well, I see, if I answer first, I see that it's a difficult task. I may disagree with you as the head coach not doing anything. I think head coaches work extremely hard, because I've had a head coach that did.
Grunt work, T. Grunt.
Sorry?
Grunt work. You know what I mean. Grunt work.
Well, different work. Different work. I mean, you do a different type of work. I mean, they out now, head coaches get to a position. I've never been a head coach, but what I'm doing in order to be a head coach, I have to study head coaches. Okay, I tell people, if you want to be something, you need to study it. I mean, I wanted to be a professional basketball player, so I need to study how and what people were doing in order to earn a contract. Okay, I couldn't impress my boys from the hood to get a contract. So if you're going to study the head coach and you want to be a head coach, you study what they do. They out selling tickets, you know, trying to get season ticket sales. They're trying to promote the program. They speaking at a lot of engagement. They're delegating positions, and you all, as an assistant coach, you have been delegated to do whatever it is your job is, whether it's grunt work or whatever. Don't ever look at the head coach and think they're chilling. Okay? Everybody has different work, but to answer your question, Coach, I think this is just my personal opinion. At least I may have a different. I think that's a difficult jump. I ain't saying that it can't be done. I think it can be done if you have a kid that's passionate and one that's willing to put in its time in order to be effective their freshman year, their rookie season, or however you want to call it, starting into the coaching profession. I think that's what I did. I mean, I started in WNBA, but the thing is, I was coming straight from playing, and and I wanted to coach because I had a passion about coaching. And I knew I was green. You can't, the first thing you better explain to a kid or any one of you out who is just hanging up your sneakers and you want to be a coach, the first thing that you better do is learn the game, the coaching game, the rules of what it takes to do your particular job. No one at this level cares how many buckets you score. You're in the coaching game now. You can only be successful by learning to play. You ever played a game? If you couldn't be successful playing basketball, if you didn't know running with the ball in your hand would be traveling, you'd get to the other team. If you didn't know the rules of the game, you can't win. So you have to learn how to be successful at this level. Coaching. That would be my advice to you. I think it would be difficult, but you can never measure the desire of somebody when they step into another arena. Only experience will tell them. But the ones that get that opportunity is always based on how they conducted themselves as a player. You know, their relationships that they built, whether or not they'd be given the opportunity, whether they played with that passion, they loved the game enough that they exuded out them and they wanted to teach the game.
I guess just for me, just the practical side of me is saying that if the rest of the staff is able to absorb that, meaning that particular coach would probably not be able to go to an event alone. They'd probably have to be with another coach, just to learn the ropes, just to even go buy a packet, you know, just stuff that we do, you know. I do think though, again, if that young man or woman brings something different to the table, which may be communicating with recruits, they might be great on the phone with them, they might be great texting with them, they're talking the language, they're, you know, probably at that point they're 22, 23 years old. That might be something different that they're bringing to the table. You know, sometimes too, I mean, for us, you know, Darius Taylor, I mean, he plays, he's a big guy, so he plays against our post players. I don't know if this particular coach might have that ability to play, because, you know, our managers can't play. We don't have certain practice players out there, especially when we're on the road, that, you know, that he becomes invaluable in those positions. But, you know, and I also think it depends on what level you're at. I think it would be difficult if you didn't have a veteran staff to absorb a young player that has absolutely no experience. I think that would be very difficult. But at the same time, too, in certain situations, it might be a perfect fit.
Yes.
Nettie Respondic, St. Francis, Brooklyn. How do things change when you start to win? Like, how do things change, or do you change anything? Do you have different expectations?
Well, I think you go more into the managing. Now you manage that vehicle. When you're trying to sell a vision, or you're trying to get your team to the level to where they can compete. Just for an example, when we got to Texas, the number one thing that we needed to do was get our players to understand the pace of a winning program. Pace. Okay, we just talked about pace, the quickness of the game. Okay, we started with the 3-on-3 drill. I would say a 3-line drill, where you pass it to the wing and the other person has to sprint, catch it, and lay it up. All our kids thought they were going to die. They could not do it. They had to go down and back. Oh, the ball was getting thrown up and slamming against the wall, and they don't think that's their pass. I mean, you'd be surprised. So then when we got to the point where we were successful at getting the pace, now we found that we became a better executing team. So it goes in stages of a process, and the process is, now when you can execute at game speed, championship speed, now the execution becomes better and your team becomes a whole lot better. Now when you get to the point where we are right now, to where we're competing against top 10 teams, now we're building confidence. So we're not there. So when you say when you start winning, I think you're just at another stage that you need to solidify. And those details that we talked about earlier, that don't ever take them for granted. Because you constantly insert new players in it, and until you have that culture, the only team that I see right now, if I had to come off the top of my head and say have that particular culture, it may be UConn and Notre Dame. That's why they're 39-0. I mean, what do they do now? They recruit, and they let that culture continue. I don't think we are winning, but at the same time, we're still climbing that ladder. When I walked into LSU, they had what you was talking about, that absolute culture. They had players that when they came to practice, it was run like it was business. I mean, going to class, there was no disciplinary issues. We didn't have that. So
that's what I'm chasing, Coach. You know, winning is one thing, but I'm chasing the fact that the only thing I want to do is coach, because the culture is at the point to where the program almost runs itself.
We talk to our kids a lot about there being another level, especially early on, that, you know, we would play, again, just SEC teams. I mean, they were another level. You know, South Carolina had some success, but when we got there, you know, they had kind of been the doormat of the SEC, and, you know, just trying to change that to get them to understand you know, a different level. And, you know, like we talk to them even now, you know, there's another level to go to the WNBA. It's another level to be a USA basketball player. I mean, there are definitely different levels. And I think that, you know, you do kind of have to teach them how to win. And we talk about mojo a lot on our team. We talk a lot about swag. You know, we're never going to disrespect the game. We're never going to be out there, you know, taunting players or, you know, anything like that. But at some point, they do have to take ownership of trying to win games. I mean, we go into every game thinking we're going to win, and I mean every game thinking we're going to win. It doesn't, and that's something that comes through, I think, in scouting reports, that comes through from the attitude of your coaches, hopefully your upperclassmen. You know, some of these freshmen come in and they've never lost before, so they have some swag, you know. I think it's really important that you have championship kids on your team, kids that have won state championships, that have been on very successful AAU teams, because they know what it's like to win. And you want kids on your team that don't like to lose. And, you know, again, I don't need to keep talking about Dawn, but she often says to them, if we lose, I'm unhappy, and if I'm unhappy, you're going to be unhappy. So, you know, that's motivation in itself. But, you know, I mean, we jest about it, but I'll tell you this really quick story. We were winning, and honestly, we did not know that it was going to be like this. We really didn't. And we were in the locker room after a game, and you know, at this point, I think we were 19-2, and it was just Nikki and I. And I'm like, Nikki, I mean, like, we're winning these games, you know, like what the hell, you know, what the hell, what's going on, you know? Nikki, like, I don't know, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid though. She's drinking the Kool-Aid, and you know, it's kind of like we ended up playing a game. We played Florida at home, and it was a Sunday game. We had almost 10,000 people there. Well, that's unheard of in Columbia. And we get out there in the first half, and they're going crazy. Our kids are, Tiffany Mitchell, she was just naming all her, she had 7 turnovers in the first half, like in the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game. And I was like, get her out, sit down, you know, what's going on? But, you know, it was all the hype, you know, and all the crowd, and everybody was into it, and all of a sudden now they're doing behind the back, through the legs, you know, throwing stuff that we've never seen before, you know, and I mean, Dawn's going crazy. This isn't Wild Kingdom, you know, like, she's just going nuts. But I will tell you this, you know, I think as we continue to win, and we continue to get people in the stands in South Carolina, because it's, you know, they like winners. So if we continue to do this and we get fans in there, I think our kids are going to learn how to handle those situations. But it is learned. I mean, it just doesn't happen. You know, I mean, we're used to playing against 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, and then all of a sudden you put in 10. So that was a lot, you know. So hopefully you learn how to do some of those things, and you get a little bit more accustomed to it. But it is a process.
Yes, ma'am.
You guys talked about changing the culture. What do you do when you have a kid that doesn't buy into the philosophy of your head coach? How do you handle that in regards to the end of the year evaluation and renewing contracts of your athletes?
Well, I got, some people would say, I have a philosophy, and it's personal. Okay, this is what I think. A kid that doesn't want to buy in to the philosophy, make that kid break, come in your direction, fight with that kid is unnecessary. Put your energy into the ones that really want to do what you, and want to go in the direction that you want to go, and watch what happens to that kid. The first initial thing is they're going to like, oh, they just cool. They're going to put on the cool mask. It doesn't bother me. That's the first defense. The second defense is they're going to run out and try and see how many more they can grab and pull in their direction by telling a joke with them. And you make sure those other kids, I ain't got time for working right now. I'm watching film right now. I'm going to be coach right now. Everything is, I ain't got time for that. If you get your kids to buy in and make sure that they recognize, don't send another kid to go get them. Okay? Send another kid to go get them, and they take that as they're attracted to me.
And when step away means step away, that means you know, you're not coming to training table. You're not going to be in the weight room. You're not going to be in the gym when we're in the gym. You're not going to do any open gym. You're just going to stay away and see if that's what you want to do. And if that's the case, you know, we can keep you on scholarship and you can get your degree at the University of South Carolina. I mean, that's drastic, but this is too hard. I mean, it's hard enough when kids want to be there, much less when kids don't want to be there. I mean, they have to be motivated at some level to go through what all of our kids go through. I'm not just saying it's hard at our schools or whatever. I mean, it's hard for all kids. I mean, they're just, you know, we're asking them to do things that are above and beyond what a normal college student does. They don't forget, they make sacrifices too. Make a lot of sacrifices. I mean, they get a lot from it. They get a free education. We take them, we travel, we do all of these things. But at the end of the day, they're still giving us sacrifices. They're the ones that have to get up early. They're putting the time in the gym. They're putting time in the weight room. They're doing all of those things. And at some point, if they don't want that, then I don't know what else to do for them, because it's just too hard for them to not have some kind of, again, ownership or something invested in the game, some kind of skin in the game.
Yes, sir.
Jay Nehru, Texas Southern. Could the two of you touch on staff continuity in building your culture, and then also transitioning from Temple onto South Carolina and Travis from LSU? What are you telling your recruits whenever mom or dad or the recruit says, are you guys going to be here next year?
You know, we were in California. We were getting ready to be in the Sweet 16 games, and Dawn and I were having dinner together, a hotel or whatever. And I said to her, you know, Dawn and I are friends, first of all, okay? And so sometimes I have to have the this is off the record type thing, you know, just talking to you right now. But I told Dawn, I said, you know, we're really fortunate. We're fortunate with our staff. We have a good staff. I was just talking to her, just telling her, I said, I'm not talking about me specifically. I said, but you know, we're in a situation where we have, you know, Nikki and Darius and, you know, Udobo and John and you know, all of these people, Paul, Diane, you know, Ari, all these different people. We're really in a special situation. And, you know, she said, I know that. She said, I know that. It is definitely an advantage to have a staff that there's continuity. It is upheaval when somebody on the staff leaves, especially somebody that's good. It's just transitional. It's one of those things, you know. I know that in transitioning from Temple to here, you know, Dawn asked me to go. You know, I wanted to go with her. But again, you know, she got people that she knew to come with her that, you know, she had a comfort level with. But I don't know if you can put a premium on a staff that stays together. I mean, look at UConn. You know, I mean, look at even when Pat at Tennessee, those coaches were with her forever. And, you know, you can say what you want, but there is strength in that. There's so many things that you don't have to worry about when you don't have to change a staff member. You know, your roles are there, you know what's expected, you know, there's a trust factor there, you know, things are going to be taken care of. I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, it's a good thing, and there's continuity there. When it comes to talking about kids, and we still get asked that, you know, Dawn is very, very, very honest. You know, she will tell them, you know, that she has no plans of leaving. You know, this particular one that we're now in South Carolina, you know, she's moved her mother from Philadelphia here. So I don't think that, you know, there'd be any reason for her it's always, always, always a possibility. As remote as it can be, it's still a possibility. But, you know, we talk about contract, we talk about the signing of contracts, how the length of the contract is. And of course, at these public schools, that's all public knowledge. So it's not like they can't find it if they didn't want to. But we choose to be honest. We try to tell them that we're going to be there with every intention of being there. And, you know, but you just never know what's down the road. I mean, there could be something happen where Dawn couldn't coach anymore. I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I mean, you know, people get fired. You know, I mean, that's the reality of our job. But I think for the most part, it would be our philosophy to be as honest as possible, and to a fault, potentially to a fault.
You said everything that needs to be said about that. It's one of those things you absolutely cannot control. I can just tell you real quickly about personal experience with Coach Conrad. Me losing my job at Texas the first time around had nothing to do with me. She resigned. I go, you know, she was done coaching. I go to LSU, have a tremendous run. I'm recruiting players. I left the #3 recruiting class in the country at LSU. And Chancellor resigned. Had nothing to do with my body of work. You just never know, and you have to be honest. As she said, with kids, my intentions are to be here. Where am I going? I'm here. But I will let you know what I explained to you about this program and the education that you can achieve from that particular university is still in place. But it's not in your control.
Lisa, Travis, thank you so much. A round of applause. Great information. Learned a lot about two programs that I know we'll be hearing a lot about next season. So we're going to look to transition now.